Good morning, Germany, and good afternoon, India. It's my great pleasure to be here this morning and welcome you all for the Munich International Symposium 2025. My name is Sanjay Phadke. It is my great pleasure to invite my friend, Adjunct Professor Reinhard Bögle, to give the introduction. So, first I will introduce him, although many of you already know him well, but it is appropriate that I introduce him and then I hand over to Reinhard Bögle. He is the president of Yoga Forum Munich. He is our principal host today. He is an educationist by background, a scholar of yoga and yoga philosophy, as you know. He also has a background in sports science and formerly he was a corporate trainer for health promotion. He is credited with the revival of traditional Ayurvedic surgical concept of marma, which is vital points in the practice of yogasana, which makes it really very refined, as well as introduction of modern biomechanics. He is an architect of the Indo-German collaboration on neuroscience of yoga. It was made possible because of his efforts more than a decade ago and because of his very close association with Center for Behavioral Medicine in India and the Münchener Volkshochschule, that is the MVHS here in Germany. We are of course very thankful to MVHS, which is roughly translatable for the Indian viewers as the Munich Open University. We are thankful for their patronage to this activity. He also is an office bearer of the International Association of Traditional Asian Medicine. He has of course authored several books, and it's my great pleasure to invite Reinhard Bögle to give an introduction to this event. Reinhard, sir, please.
Yes, thank you. Thank you very much. I welcome the people who are sitting in front of the computer. Sitting is an important yoga thing, and they are bigger than the group here. Next big group is here, people sitting in chairs in this room. Next group, this is an official extension of yoga teacher education of this institution, Munich Volkshochschule. As Dr. Phadke has announced, who is our host, we are in the house. We are in the middle of a seminar, how to teach yoga in a better way. And then we are very happy that some people are sitting in their chairs in India and in here, and they will help us to understand what is a better teaching of yoga. And the topic is that we have also a sort of assessment, a sort of measurement, which is there. This is now an old thing. We started 50 years back, and there's a big list of contributors. And when I point out of this list, there was one man who really helped the whole development, and this was Dr. Rieger. He's no more. He was head of this institution at that time. He initiated to get quite a big money from the city of Munich to learn to understand what should be the content of teaching in yoga classes. So this is what started in 1970s. There was this project, several 100,000 D-marks at that time, which was quite a big money for this project. It went on 3-4 years, and then after that there were external, internal, medical people, physics people, philosophical people, all people who contributed to have a look what is a proper content for yoga. This was the beginning. Then they started the yoga teacher education because they wanted to fulfill the purpose that Munich people can learn yoga, and Munich is a city of health in the world with 2 big universities and with a lot of health activities and sport activities. And then they had the idea we need also Indians for the proper understanding. So there we made one group travel to India to learn about yoga and Ayurveda. We invited at that time important medical people like from Lonavala, Dr. Bole, who was a medical expert in Lonavala at that time. We invited a very important Ayurvedic person, Vaidya Nanal, who was in the Indian Yoga Commission as specialist to check the yoga institutes. Okay, so then it went, and we found, luckily enough, Dr. Sanjay Phirke, Dr. Lena Phirke, Dr. Lütje and others. And when the thing went on, we were invited to the Yantra conference to Bangalore. 2 times we tried to help there to show what yoga could be. And now we have the symposium today. The main point is, if we want to do yoga and do it in a proper way, we have to understand yoga and to get a proper idea of how the regulation is influencing the whole psychic, bodily, social part of the person, so that it is becomes a good flow of regulation and information. And I'm very happy that a lot of people will contribute today to this topic. Now we will have 2 important institutions and people who support this, and they will make a short words of greetings. First one will be the head of the Bavarian Health and Food Safety Authority with a nice Bavarian logo, which you see here for the Indian. This is the logo of Bavaria. Professor Herr, she also was at the Yastam conference in Kiel. She did start also the research and the idea to check whether yoga is really helping for stress in a scientific literature. And she understood with us that it is not so easy with yoga to say yoga is helpful for stress, so that we, the result of this study was we need more about the concept of yoga, and we need more what is really done in yoga to get a proper idea whether yoga can help for stress and not. And she is very much in the business of medicine at the workplace, because their institution also educates people who are in the workplace, and the idea is that through the workplace the informations come to the families. This is the main idea, how to distribute health information into the society.
Ladies and gentlemen, dear colleagues, guests and friends of yoga, it is my great pleasure to welcome you here today. I extend warm greetings to all our guests, especially to the speakers and organizers who have made this symposium possible. Our symposium, Health and Well-being and Yoga, Concepts and Assessment, offers a valuable opportunity to share our collective passion for yoga and to exchange new insights and experiences. The challenges currently facing our society, particularly those related to maintaining public health, are immense. While biological factors are often beyond our control, many influences on health, such as environmental conditions, healthcare systems, and personal lifestyle choices, can be shaped to promote well-being. There is much we can do to live a healthier life. It is especially true when it comes to our personal lifestyles. Balanced nutrition, regular physical activity, relaxation, and restorative sleep form the foundation of a good health. Yoga has increasingly become a key element in this area. It is a growing reputation in scientific and medical communities has helped to strengthen its positive reputation. Today, yoga is firmly established in mainstream society, and many of its principles forming a vital part of modern health promotion strategies. The health benefits of yoga are widely acknowledged in both the media and the scientific literature, including the respective journals such as the Deutsches Ärzteblatt. I am pleased to note that public health insurances in Germany support and fund certified yoga programs as a part of preventive healthcare, particularly for stress reduction and resources strengthening, both in private and professional context. At the Bavarian Health and Food Safety Authority, yoga is an integral part of our official workplace promotion program. Regular classes are offered alongside introductory workshops and activities during our health awareness days. The Indo-German collaboration in yoga research aims to deepen our understanding of the practice through rigorous scientific inquiry. The insights gained are then integrated into training programs for yoga professionals, thereby contributing to higher quality and evidence-based instructions. For today's symposium, I wish you all an inspiring day, filled with thoughts, provoking lectures, and engaging discussions, and valuable exchanges for knowledge and experience. I thank you very much for your attention.
Als nächstes wird Professor Gündel ein Großwort sprechen. Professor Gündel is in Ulm and he is a psychosomatic medicine and psychotherapy specialist. And one of his main interests is, as we can see here, pain therapy, burnout, depression, chronic physical complaints and illness and mental states. And in this way he is interested to be on this border between real illness and how to come back to health in these topics, and how he himself practices yoga, and he is very interested to see how yoga could be more implemented in this. Therefore we are thankful to have his support also.
Hello, my name is Harold Gündel and I'm happy to say hello to you. Unfortunately, I cannot join you, but I have to say that over years I have been in contact with Reinhard Bögle, and I really think that he's a very experienced yoga teacher who, what is seldomly observed, really has an interest first to understand what is happening while practicing yoga in the body, and secondly also to try to gather scientific data on the effects of yoga. So embedded in yoga is the aspect of introspection, and it's the aspect of we are our body, and what we do for our body is good for our health. When I look at the list of speakers, I think this will become a really interesting conference. It will have a clinical aspect and it will have a scientific aspect, and I wish you a really good discussion, and am eager to hear after the conference what will be the outcome. So welcome also to this beautiful part of Germany. I wish you all a really good day and exciting discussions, and say hello and goodbye.
So we are really thankful for these messages from very important people. And now I would like to introduce Professor B.N. Gangadhar, who will deliver his keynote address. He was my teacher during my psychiatry residency and has continued to be an influencer since then. He is an internationally acclaimed psychiatry and neuroscience researcher. Just last month, very recently, he retired as the chairman of National Medical Commission of India, and he was honored by the government of India for his contribution, scientific contribution to medical sciences. Now he is the professor emeritus. Formerly, he was the senior professor of psychiatry and director of NIMHANS, the National Institute of Mental Health and Neuroscience, of which I am an alumnus. He is a fellow of several important academic bodies: Indian Academy of Medical Sciences, Indian Academy of Sciences, the Royal College of Physicians, Edinburgh, and also a member of International Brain Research Organization, which is at Vienna. He served on the editorial board of several important national medical journals. He is a sort of pioneer in the neurobiology of yoga research and the architect of integrative medicine in India, patron of all and also inspires us all. So, can we have Professor Gangadhar sir live?
Let me thank the Yoga Forum Mention for inviting me. Yoga for well-being is the discussion that is happening in the symposium. I believe yoga is for well-being and it's rightly used in this today's discussion. What I will share in my presentation would be what is well-being and what we can do and why we have to guard the well-being and what yoga can do with respect to well-being and also in particular mental health, the evidence that is coming up over the course of time and what the yoga teachers can take it on themselves to promote wellness through yoga or even otherwise. But very importantly, we need to tell everyone that we are ourselves responsible for our health. To expect anyone else to do it, maybe of course we can, but very important that we take the responsibility. And being fit and healthy is going to keep the illness away, and that is very important, and that is common sense though. Being fit ensures also wellness and also it lowers the burden on the society of our illness. So we have to follow a healthy lifestyle and a stress-free living and continue to remain productive and with that spiritual purpose in our life. So this is in essence what being healthy and being well and well-being talks about. I'm speaking to a conference which is happening in München, Germany. And so I put up the statistics of Germany. Well-being and health consciousness is remarkable in Germany. And actually, it ranks second when it comes to exercise and physical activity in the world. It ranks third in the healthcare innovation index. It's the best access with respect to insurance and healthcare access. Again, it is the best. Life expectancy is 81 years. Just this morning, I found it was 81.71, close to 82 years. Congratulations. But nonetheless, while this is in the top 10 in the world with respect to health awareness, health care, health access, and so on, there are concerns which have been expressed related to non-communicable diseases, particularly the cardiovascular diseases, cancer, dementias, mental illness, obesity, and alcohol. And these are all very much related to the practice of lifestyle, yoga, and of course, bringing down our reach to alcohol, drugs, and so on. So, given what the plus points for which Germany has to be congratulated, there are, of course, concerns raised, and let's see how we can address some of these things. Here we are when it comes to the health care and well being. We have, of course, the option of health services. But health services, which provide support to these things, contributes only to a very small fraction of what we need to preserve our health. In fact, what we can do ourselves accounts for more than 3 times what the health services in terms of its treatment can give us. So, the self empowerment and guarding our health has been shown statistically as the most powerful ingredient in ensuring that we keep a good health. So the healthy lifestyle becomes central, whether it is NCDs or otherwise as well, to keep ourselves fit and well, uh, our own empowerment, our own role, and what we can be offered by all support systems that are available to support us or to empower us becomes more important. What do we mean by this empowerment? What do you mean by this promotion? What do you mean by that what we can practice? Although immunization and vaccination have given some support to empower us, but more importantly, awareness, with respect to nutrition, awareness with respect to physical activity, and of course yoga. Since it is yoga forum, yoga is another important area where we need to perhaps promote people to be physically active. In any case, your own country ranks, I said, third in terms of physical activity in the world. And measures to mitigate stress. This is very important since we are talking of yoga, how we can manage our own stress levels. This becomes very important. And of course, most importantly, that social connectedness, which yoga brings about, and that social connectedness is going to reduce the stress. And in effect, we will be moderating our activities to ensure that we are healthy. In fact, yoga is considered and has been told in the Bhagavad Gita as something that is very instrumental in keeping our health. And how we do it is by moderating our activity, our food, our social interactions, our sleep, and the lifestyle patterns. Yuktahara viharasya, yukta chestasya karmasu, yukta swapnavabodhasya, yogo bhavati dukkha. To keep suffering away, practice yoga, and that practice yoga in the arms of the diet, our social interactions, physical activity, and the lifestyle in general. So, having said that, which is said in the Bhagavad Gita, we ensure that we be fit. But about being fit, there are many measures, of course. Physical activity, and you monitor your fitness quotient, and so on and so forth. Main thing is the anthropometric measurements. Obesity, as I showed in an earlier slide, has been growing world over, and of course, so in Germany as well. And monitoring this early from the ages of youth will ensure, that is merely monitoring the waist circumference, the weight, the BMI, and these can be done very simply. In fact, one of my colleague walks around in many conferences with a tape around his neck, and he says the stethoscope is more expensive, the tape is less expensive, and so you follow the tape, you will be well all through without expenditure. So ensure that you are physically fit, and physique is also fit. And this can happen through moderating many of the lifestyle patterns. And more importantly, yoga. In fact, yoga helps us to increase our strength, increases our flexibility, it improves balance and stability, it helps cardiovascular functioning, and the cardiovascular health is guarded by way of yoga. Weight management, again, yoga is very commonly used when well-being and being stress-free. Yoga is an important ingredient. When I mention yoga, I don't want people to be preoccupied with the yoga postures which you usually see, or some of the breathing techniques, pranayama. But I think yoga has several components, not just the asanas, the pranayama, the meditating part of it, and also many of the do's and don'ts that we are expected to follow in our life, the moral lifestyle as well. So put together, if one follows the yoga, he is able to achieve well-being and being stress-free. And yoga in these years has gained a lot of attention. So in recent years, yoga research has taken a lot of attention. In fact, close to about 9,500 hits come when you put yoga on the PubMed indexing search. And very importantly, in the last 1 year itself, about 1/10 of the publications have come, which means it is rapidly getting attracted to medical researchers, and medical research has been growing in the area of yoga applications. And most applications have happened in mental health. In fact, in the last many years, since the yoga became a researching subject, close to 1,300 articles can be obtained on a hit by applying yoga and mental health. Likewise, yoga, the next area where yoga has been put to use is cancer and malignancy research, where people who are giving treatment or support to the end of life people and palliative care people, yoga has been very helpful. And most of the research that has happened in medical science is with respect to yoga in NCDs, whether it is cardiovascular health, diabetes, obesity, and a host of those things, including infertility in women. These are the areas wherein yoga has been found very helpful. In the research has demonstrated that. And within mental health, anxiety and depression form the bulk of research areas in yoga, followed by schizophrenia, drug abuse disorders, insomnia, and also childhood psychiatric disorders. So, in all these areas, yoga has been put to use in terms of mental health and promoting relief as well as well being. And we find that the research has been very supportive and the evidence has been building, both by way of clinical experience and by way of laboratory biomarkers for yoga. For example, I'll give one or two examples of laboratory biomarkers of yoga. Yoga includes several procedures. One of them is chanting Om. When Om is chanted, there are researchers which have demonstrated that there is a deactivation of the limbic circuits. Limbic gray matter, limbic nuclei are deactivated. As you know, that limbic area is the place where emotions generated, and making the person less emotional is one of the ways it could happen by way of chanting Om, which is a practice which is used as a part of a battery of yoga practices that we let people do at different points of the time in a day. So, one of the yoga procedures we have demonstrated has an impact on the limbic structures, which are helpful to contain my emotions. And as a consequence of containing the emotions, follows the stress being less on me. And one of the evidences of stress being less is the reduction in the cortisol level, the stress hormone. Cortisol levels drop both in healthy individuals who practice yoga regularly and in individuals who have depression. You know, depression is associated with stress, and there are increased levels of cortisol in the blood of individuals with depression. In fact, higher levels of cortisol has been mooted to be a diagnostic marker of depression, although not very well accepted. But nonetheless, depressives over the course of the day have higher levels of cortisol than healthy individuals. Apply yoga as a part of treatment in them, the levels of cortisol drop, and more patients lose cortisol levels in their blood. And as a consequence, or otherwise, perhaps, although we may not get a true cause effect relationship, reduction of cortisol facilitates brain repair, and one of the mediators of brain repair is the brain derived neurotropic factor. Practice of yoga in depressive individuals ensures that the brain derived neurotropic factor goes up, and so the brain is protected from the insult related to the depression and the stress, and so the gray matter is retained in the brains. In fact, many researchers have demonstrated that chronic yoga practice facilitates increase of the gray matter in the brain. Age dependent loss of gray matter becomes stunted when yoga is continuously practiced. So, those who are practicing yoga regularly, age related reduction in the gray matter is perhaps not occurring. And in those who are not practicing yoga, like many of us, perhaps the age related shrinking of the gray matter is demonstrated in the MRI scans. And more recently, as we have all been talking about yoga as an important mediator of compassion, connectedness, social connectedness. In fact, the word yoga itself means that it connects my personal consciousness to that cosmic consciousness. When that transcendent effect is happening, I'm sure in the process, I am also connecting to neighboring consciousness. And this neighboring consciousness, connectedness, social connectedness ensures that the society is unified together and is able to help each other. And that the system ensures growth with compassion. In fact, this connectedness which we see in a social realm perhaps may also be seen in the biological realm, in the network connectivity in the brain is better with the practice of yoga. And we have seen in schizophrenia, some of the default node networks are less coherent when they are ill. You give them yoga as a part of reduction in the negative symptoms get better, and over the course of time, the default mode network's coherence actually gets better. In other words, what we see in terms of connectedness that happens socially is also has some bearing from a biological correction of connectedness within the brain systems. So, having said these things, I want to bring back the role of all yoga therapists who are uh, motivated to guard the health of the individuals. You could perhaps be doing a very good job if you start promoting health and well-being through, of course, yoga practices and promoting a better lifestyle in these individuals. For that matter, if you look at the health pyramid, the base, which is the widest, is the self-care or inputs informally that is occurring from health supporters who are promoting health, who are helping people to practice better lifestyle. And this is the largest foundation for health. And if you do that, the apex gets narrower and narrower, and the need to go to a doctor becomes smaller and smaller. So in summary, caring for health is my personal responsibility. And when I care for health and make sure that I don't become ill, I reduce the burden on my society. A fit individual allows a fit world, and this fit world can be promoted by all those activists who promote wellness, well-being, and health lifestyle pattern, who are the yoga teachers or yoga therapists who have shown by their research that yoga can promote wellness and well-being, both by way of reducing stress, reducing the illness risk factors, and also promoting well-being. So I stop here. I thank each one of you for being with me. I thank the Yoga Forum for having invited me. Thank you very much. Thank you, Dr. Bogle, and thank you, Dr. Sanjay Phadke.
Next, we will have the lecture of Dr. Sanjay Phadke. And as you can see, he is an important neuropsychiatrist. And luckily, he did not only do research on medicines for psychiatric diseases, he also uses the understanding of research for the research of yoga. And you can see here in the slide that he is a senior consultant, that he is a chair of the Center of Behavioral Medicine, which is working with us together since 2012, and that he is the chair of the task force of the mind-body medicine in Indian Psychiatric Society, and that he really professional works on all these topics. And I'm very happy to have this important lecture.
Good, thank you.
On
So the Zoom is back.
Clinimetrics.
We hope that the technology demon. Yeah. So
Go ahead.
So fine. So thank you so much, and my great pleasure to speak about this aspect. Technically, it's called as clinimetrics. Simply, it means measuring some very important things for health and well-being. So this English term called health, it itself means whole, but because of various historic reasons, I'm not going in that. We have three consequences. First is that over the period of time, we have a split in mind and body. So in most of modern medicine, we have a body bias, and similarly, the psychotherapy people have a mind bias. So psychotherapy people think less of the body, and the medical doctors, they think less of the mind. Unfortunately, they both have illness bias. So we look at even health from the perspective or the prism of illness, and there is also a professional bias in health giving. So self-help is assigned a lower role. As medical people, we want to remain in business, so we think that people should give us more business and they should do less of it. So we have these three biases, and in effective health system, of course, we want to make the health system more effective, so we have to deal with these biases. Next one, please. Okay, so in search of a solution, so first is that we are interested to have a right concept or a good model about the health and well-being. We have a lot of good understanding about illness, but I must confess that our understanding about health is not so great. We also need to create, not only have a good model, not concept, but should be able to create a good measurement about it, because something which we can't measure, we can't really fix it well. Next one. We all know these developments that in modern times, last 75-80 years, it started with WHO coming out with this definition of health, which they describe as a state, complete physical, mental, social well-being, etc. It was more a good inspiration, conceptual sort of a treatment, definition, and later people sort of amplified that. So someone said that health is a very important resource for us to lead a quality life. Other group said that it's basically an ability to adapt and to self-manage. Next one. Cardiology people said that health offers us a protection, not just against the cardiology problem, but a host of illnesses. Other people said it's an experience, we can feel it. If we have good health, we should feel it. And there is an interesting proposition, which is that health has a natural design. So it's not something that we just feel, or it's a state, or it's a resource, but it has something very fundamental to it, and it is natural design. So all the beings who are alive, all the living beings, they have this fundamental design, and we have been actually following this idea now for some time. This wonderful breakthrough, I would say, in medicine publication, this very important book called as From Clocks to Chaos, they talk about the rhythms of life, as somewhere being perhaps a very important component of this natural design. Next one. So we build on this idea, and our selection therefore is that it is a natural design, so which is regulated. Now we know by these three processes, a lot of understanding. You can just note these keywords, read about them later: homeostasis, allostasis, and the voluntary regulation. And what it ensures is a free flow of the biorhythms. The biorhythms are really able to work in their nice way, And what is that nice way? So that nice way is a fluctuation within a range or a healthy variability. So it's not constancy. The rhythms are not constant all the time. They fluctuate. That's why I put, this nice wave picture from the music here. We know, it goes up and down in a very nice way, and that is how is the, you can say, the basic fundamental fabric of health. And of course, biorhythms are our connection to the nature outside. We have a speaker who is going to talk about that, and that's why we think this is a very sound fundamental biophysical idea for us to build our concept, our ideas about health. Next one. This is validated by the work of Harvard cardiology professor Eric Goldberger, who researched the cardiac dynamics, and he found that this is indeed true, that if we have a good waviness, that is a feature of health. If it starts becoming very uniform, it's not healthy. So this is health. This is health, and this flat line is not really a good health. Okay. It's further validated by Lena Fadke's work. So she also makes a presentation later today. So what you can see here is this is called as a Poincare graph. is from a normal healthy person, nice cigar shape, person gets a diabetes, complications, so it shrinks. So, this nice wavy thing, it sort of shrinks, becomes a straight line, not a good feature of health. So, we have this possibility to understand health in a very quantitative way through some of these biophysical means. Up till now, as you know, because of the strong influence of medicines that we use, the entire health related understanding or ideas were more biochemical in nature. We looked more up to the chemistry to understand health. Now, we think that looking up to physics is a good idea. It can give us a whole understanding that the whole system works well. Nice. Next one. Okay. So, first idea is that health is these nice rhythms. Second idea, of course, that health is whole, mind, body together, and it not just two categories, illness and health, but it is like a dimension. So, that you have a healthy ordered system, then something which is in between disease and good health, and then the disease complications. And the fourth good idea that we have a possibility, and it is also well demonstrated now, that we have a possibility to bring about some good order in the system back. So, from disorder to order. Okay. Next one please. Again the validation comes from Lina's lab. As you can see here, these are the large samples of people, and long term yoga practicing people, yoga practitioners, incidentally they were actually older people, and some of the people that you see here are age wise younger than them, but they have a good power of the autonomic nervous system, and healthy, otherwise healthy people, but not doing any yoga like activity. Then the diabetes people, T2DM is diabetes without complication and diabetes with complication. So, you do see that it is like a spectrum. So, the healthy people, resilient people, normal people, people with illness and people with complications. Now, so you see the disorder developing in the system. The best part is up till now we only use this English term called as disorder, but now we have a possibility in a physical sense, to really measure this disorder, the degree of disorder, and it does correspond, to our state of health. Next one. Okay. But do we want it, only through all the very sophisticated instruments and technology, or is it possible, for us to also know whether our system is in a good order or disorder in a relatively simple way? So, we get inspiration from these two people, Alvan Feinstein and Giovanni Fava. They lay emphasis on you select measures, for example, sleep, digestion, which are clinically important. We all know that they are important for our health, all these measures. So, that you select them, clinically relevant, and also they are sensitive to change, they can change it, they can get better. So, they can help us differentiate between patients, one person and second person, and they should have incremental validity, they increase the value. So, this is a slightly different philosophy than we use for most of our other medical assessments. Okay. So, medical people know this, for you it is sufficient to know that these are the factors which are important from our health viewpoint. Next one. Okay. So, following these two ideas, that we are looking at good healthy rhythms, and we are looking at processes which are clinically relevant important, and they all come from very large scale studies over last many years. We all know that sleep is important for good health. We all know that we need to have a good digestive process for our health. We all know that if we sleep well, if digestion works well, then we also have a good energy. Energy also has a cycle, a rest cycle and an energy cycle, and the sexual and reproductive rhythm. On the other side, as we said, we like to have this mind body together. So, not just the so called physical body rhythms, but also the mind rhythms, which is a feeling of comfort and stability, the feeling of well being which we can feel. Then this psychological engagement with activities and work. If we really feel nice, we feel like looking forward to the work, doing our work, daily work. Our daily work is perhaps the most important positive thing which helps in making the well being. Optimism means hope about, we think in a good way about the future, and our ability to regulate or control ourselves. And as you can see, you are all yoga teachers, yoga practitioners, that is close connection, and as Professor Gangadhar said, that in the research it is demonstrated, that is exactly these factors which are regulated by yoga to bring out the good order in the system. Next one. Now, this is the third idea, more important for us as medical researchers and clinicians, that we put it in a format, all these 8 factors, so that we can measure them with certain degree of precision. And there is already an existing, you can say, way which we apply in our clinical research. Next one, so that we have some very good way of measuring it. Essentially, the principle is that we say that this is a normal situation, this is a mild problem, this is a moderate problem, severe problem, how to do it, there are proper training and ways of understanding it. The incremental contribution is to the same spectrum, we have added actually the positive side of health also. Next one. And we have clear, definitions of these, use information from all sources and then put it there, clear definition, what mild means, what moderate means, what severe means, what positive means. Next one. And this is some statistical information that many researchers over the years have studied all these 8 factors, and they found that we can really assess them in a proper way which is acceptable for the research and clinical work. Next one. But this is, I think, our another important sort of a creative idea, that in addition actually to the medical researchers and medical clinicians, can other health professionals and patients also use the same ideas. So, we experimented with it a lot for some time, and we found this very easy non-verbal pictorial mode. So, everyone intuitively knows green is good, green is in proper order, yellow little bit problem, orange more problem, red more problem. So, we found that patients themselves are also able to rate it very well. So, we have 2 lines here. Sometimes we use it, the first line, the people they rate themselves, their own health. We simply explain to them about these 8 factors in a simple way. They are able to put a sort of a tick mark there as to currently where their health situation is. And we can also put our, either use the next line for that or use for a next follow up. So, we like people, if they are in the orange or yellow, we like them to move in the green zone. So, it gives a very clear map to people as to where they are in terms of their own health, self assessment for the self health, and then we are able to work together to bring it to the green zone. As you can see here, they are the graphs from some real patients. You can see that no 2 people are similar. They all have the obesity problem, overweight problem, for which they have been in clinical consultation, rather they have multiple medical issues. Next one. Yeah, good. So, as you can see that in some way they all are alike, they have same illness, but otherwise in terms of these biorhythms they are different. So, each individual has very personal type of problem, and it gives us good, you can say, goals to start working with people. They also have a good clarity, they are also able to work towards it. So, this is the most important idea, that if we want to start with this self help, if we want to bring yoga as more part of the therapeutic work, we must have some simple way to make the beginning, simple way to make a measurement, and simple way to assess subsequently also, whatever efforts we are putting in, are they useful, are we going in the right direction. So, this kind of a simple systems are very important for that. Last one. Okay, so this is the conclusion, that is whole scheme. On one hand, this CGI, the clinical global impression of health, and the healthgram, the opportunity for health and well-being assessment, which is mostly free from these biases, the mind body bias, the illness bias, the professional bias. It is supported by this emerging science of biophysics of rhythms, and it is practical for this measurement of the clinical measurements and for clinical trials. We have 3 versions. One is a research version, of course, much more elaborate, needs a training, then a clinical version simpler than that, and finally this simple dual use graphical version. PROM is a technical term, patient rated the outcome measures, which they themselves can assign, where they are in terms of their own health, which enables rapid assessment by any health and well-being professional, including the yoga teachers. Okay, so the Zoom is back. So the main idea is that compared to some years ago, today we have a better idea as to what health and well-being is, and we also have a better idea that how to measure it. Okay, so let us use it. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Sanjay Phirke. He explained the main purpose of this conference, how we can have scientifically planned observations which go together with the observation of the patient or yoga student or everybody in a day-to-day life. So this is a connection which he nicely explained, so I thank you very much for this. And we will hear today more examples of how this can be used. Lena Phirke will show examples how she uses. Klaus Post will show examples of how he uses it. So this is in different fields we can develop this concept of scientific on the one side and very close to the person concept on the other side. So when we come to a person, there's some workspace in the brain, a workspace for the whole human being. The idea is the brain is not the brain, but the brain opens a workspace for the whole inside body and outside body. So basically we have information from these four sources. People plan mentally outside what they are doing, like you plan now to listen to me. People plan inside what they are doing, now I plan to speak to you. And of course also the senses inside work. When I'm standing, I still can observe standing. This is a special yogic thing. I had one person, he was a head of a company, and the company went to Mark Stockett, and then I asked him when he had his lectures, did he feel his feet? He said no. So I have trained a little bit to feel my feet, so I have an introspection of my feet while I'm speaking. You maybe when you sit, you have also an introception of your feet or your sitting bones or your side trunk or whatever. And we have an exteroception that we see the outside world, that we feel the floor and the chair under us and the temperature and so on. And just to see a person with body, senses, awareness, mind, and the outside world. This is a common understanding. Now when we go to details, then we know there's an input from the left side. It's all from inside and outside. Then there are the senses, and mainly we have the sense of touch. And thankfully, Dr. Klaus Post, he works with pain patients. This sense is very important for them, the pain. And we see there's quite a big number of nerve fibers. Little less than eyes are nerve fibers for pain. So it's easy to understand that it's very easy to experience pain. It's near to seeing. This is very interesting. And we don't have the real number, how many informations is by pain, but at the end there's a combination of all these informations which come from the inside and the outside, and they go to a central processing. They are integrated in the brain. And then this integration is one of the most difficult parts which we have to deal with, that of these 10 by 9 or 10 bits per second, we have only 10 in our awareness. This is very, 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 very little. The rest, they are in unconscious processing, a big number, and then the rest, they are not processed at all. And then the outcome is the motor skills, speaking, thinking, and whatever. And this is the output which goes also in both directions, into the outer world and into the inner world. Okay, and so we have a simple goal, what Dr. Sanjay Fursey explained in very scientific terminology, that we have to organize this all the time. And this is what Lena Förke will also explain more, that this whole organization is permanently goes on and is the quickest organization we have in us. Therefore, the Indians said this is the quickest, this is the Vayu, and this is like the movement of the eyelid. It is such quick and even quicker than that. Then when we come to how this is for the specialists, for the non-specialist, we just can understand there come information from joints, from muscle, from tendons, from bones, from whatever, from skin, and from internal organs. So we have basically these blue points of sensitivity, so-called somatic sensitivity, which comes from the whole apparatus of movement, and the so-called visceral sensitivity, which comes from the inner organs. And this makes together the sense of touch, which is always working also inside and outside together. Then the main question is, if we have all this complex apparatus, how a person can get a proper information of it. And the proper information is very simple. It is hard and soft, warm and cold, movable, stable, all that. This is what everybody can understand without much learning. Already people know. I feel cold, I feel hot, I feel unstable, I feel stable. My whole mind-body system is soft, or it is in a hard manner, hard-working manner, and so on. So this is an inner sensory experience. And then, of course, we have a mental, emotional state. And this is observation, focused attention. We will hear more about all these things, creative mind work. And then, of course, this big topic of regulation. Regulation of decisions, regulation of emotions, regulation of attention, and so on and so on. And then this whole is in a rhythm. It's not in a flow in this sense. The idea of flow is not that the flow is very totally constant. Then it has some up and down, around some middle part, ups and downs. Ups and downs, we will see this is very important to have a proper understanding how we can measure it. Because with the ups and downs, we measure. We measure, now this is, I'm most tired, this is down. I'm very alive, this is up. So with the up and down, and this is what Sanjay Förke did not use the time to explain, that the brain mainly is measuring this, the comparison, not the number. So the assessment in this sense is not too much quantitative, but the qualitative measurement in the first go, and the quality, as you all know, goes always with a bit of quantity. We eat one apple. So we are interested in the apple, not in the one. We don't eat the one, but the quantity is there. It's not that it's not there. Okay, so when we see, this is the main idea which we need. There are millions and millions of informations, of signals, of inner and outer things happening all the time, and there is, most of them we cannot, as we have seen, be aware of it. Then the point is, what should we do with these millions? Then we see, okay, there is a reduction, so anatomy helps us for the reduction. We understand there are muscles, there are bones, there are joints. This is a reduction where the whole complexity is not lost, but it is in the reduction. This is one of the main concepts we have to understand. that when we come from one point, that this is not a reduction, because we have all in Western world learned to reduce things to make it easy, and then a lot of important information are lost. So the Indian idea is, if you see a boat from far, then you see only one point. It's not a reduction, the whole boat is there. If it comes nearer, you see 2, 3, 4, 5 points. Is it very close to your eyes, you see only a little part of the boat. So this expanding and shrinking is a normal thing which everybody knows and understands, but we normally do not think mentally that all the things we can look at it in this way. So this is not a reductionist view that we reduce it to one simple thing, but we just can, this whole very much expanded things we can shrink as to put it a little bit far away. So if we see a person near, then we cannot see the whole person. We look in the eyes, we look in the face, we look which type of shoes a person has, what are the trousers, and then of course we look what Sanjay said, sexual things. It is well known to which places women look and to which places men look and all that. We look one piece. But if the person is not so near, then suddenly we only see the arms and the legs and the trunk and the head, and that's it. If the person is more far, we see more or less one point. And this is the main idea which we need to understand to have a so-called topological view. Like in the landscape, this is topological. The tree, we see the whole tree, or we see part of the tree. But in the part of the tree, this is also now well known that this is like in a cauliflower, the parts are similar, the self-similarity of the parts and the whole. Okay, so we can come to 600 muscles, this is too much. And we can reduce it to 100, a good number, then it's too much. Then we reduce it to 10. So this is the idea of this 10-point concept, which Sanjay Phirke, they are using. He had no time to talk about that more, which is Lena Phirke using and so on, and which is in Professor Hemant Bhargav in Niemann's using, that the patient in the first yoga session learns about the 10 points. And this is also what Lena Phirke does with her patients, and what your physiotherapist does, isn't it, Klaus? To just show feet, legs, arms, trunk, side trunk, 10 points. So we come to these 10 points. Okay, here you see 2 positions, but in every position, this is also a very important thought, in every position, the 10 points are there. This is not a specific yoga thing that we have feet. It's not a specific yoga thing that we have head. Everybody knows. So feet, upper legs are the more stronger part of the leg and the whole leg. Upper arm is the more stronger part of the arm, and then we have the whole trunk with everything which is inside. So inside the trunk, there's a muscular part of the trunk, the trunk stability, side stability, there's a inner organs part of the trunk, digestive organs and the lungs and the heart. And when you comes really to measurement clinimetric, now there are concepts to not use this concept of lower back, middle back, neck, then to use a concept to see the whole spine as one. And also our Indian spine specialist who also makes operations in spine, he told in the Indian conference to medical people, when I look into the spine and make an operation, I don't see a difference between the lumbar spine and the chest spine. It is the same spine. That is only in the mind of people that they make this difference. Okay, so when we come to measurement, clinimetrics, it's better to have a new concept where the whole spine is seen as one and the whole trunk is one, and the spine is part of the whole trunk, which is the spine is the middle of the trunk, and if the left side and the right side is strong, the middle has not much load and can be a little bit flexible and elastic. So this is the main idea. Legs are for walking and standing. We need them 24 hours. Arms are for operating with the arms. And the main question is not that we make a very specific position. The main question is, do these 10 points fit together or do they don't they fit together? So we should stop thinking yoga is a very, very special connection of these 10 points which is required. This is not. It's just, is it a painful connection or is it a non-painful connection? This is. If we say there are legs, then the first yoga idea is legs are existing. And this is the proper translation of asana. People think asana is a special type of existence, but the root in asana is as, and this is to exist. So the basic thing is existence. So what we want to make people aware that they have language for that also, that the leg exists. That there's a language, we have feet, we have legs with upper legs, we have arms, we have hands, we have side chest, and what we observe, now we have a project with the Munich people who burn the garbage. So we observe they have no idea that they have a side trunk. So our main teaching is to teach these people there's a side trunk and you can use the side trunk. This is like that. It exists. There's a mental part, this is a sensory part, this is a part later for action that we know we have something, side trunk, this is existing. Next thing is the leg, the side trunk has some space, there's an inner space. It's not only an outer space there. So it has some volume, length, we have our size of shoes and all that, which goes according to this space which it has. Then, interestingly, whole life we have legs. There's a time factor that we have the legs till the end of our life. And then, again, the last thing is a movement. And then we have learned that movement is possible and that static is a special case of movement and not no movement. Okay. So this, I think, is the main understanding that we have steps and that asana is not to make, in the first go, to make a specific position, then only to realize, and this is a proper yoga term, that realization is important. We should realize it, that there are legs. Then we can feel them, then we can understand them, the function, and then we can use them in a proper way. And this is from education, the important point of view. Education, on one hand, is very difficult. Because we have several levels of education, we have a lot of didactic things and so on and so on and so on. But basically, education is to deal with signals. To deal with signals is to deal with situations. And now the situation is here, this is a symposium with lecture. And the signals, the internet signals are important, but also the speech and the signals and your signals of the sitting bones and the stool and all these signals are important, and they are all at the same time. So the situation with all these signals, this allows the perception. Then we have to understand which qualification do we need to handle these signals? Okay, so all you have learned to sit in a chair. This is a high qualification. It needs years to learn this. You also have the qualification to listen to language. This is even much longer, that it needs till 16, 18 that we really can listen to language in a proper way and get the understanding of an article or of the newspaper or anything. It's a long time, but we take it just for granted. But this is also learning, and the more learning is not in school, the more learning is outside of the school. And then we have to understand what is the special element, a curricular element we call that, what is designed to learn the missing part. Because learning at the end is always to push something from what a person does not know, like Sanjay Phadke pushed us to clinimetrics. I did not know clinimetrics 3 months earlier. He pushed me to understand clinimetrics. I did not know. This is learning always is you push somebody in something which he does not know. Otherwise it's no learning. So these are the 3. And these 3 every yoga teacher can have in a very creative way to teach all these 3 that there's a proper learning for health. Thank you very much for your listening. Now I'm very happy Paola has one topic which we always talk about, that we live in this 24-hour cycle. A day is 24 hours, and then we take it for granted that 24 hours is there. And she is one of the persons who knows best how these 24 hours are organized, because she is from astrophysics and she works in the European Southern Observatory in a place near Munich. They have in South America, I think you have an observation station. And the very good thing is that she is also studied yoga, so she is able to make a proper connection between the inner world and the influence of these cosmic elements. So please, I'm happy to hear your talk.
Thank you, Reinhard. Thank you very much. Thank you for inviting me here. I take it from a complete different perspective. This is the title was agreed together with Phadke to put it into connection with what he was talking about, what Reinhard was talking about, what you will be hearing later today. So let's first put ourselves in the constant where we are in the cosmos, where we are in the solar system. So the first thing to understand, I think everybody is aware, the importance of the sun and the importance of cycles of seasonal variation on Earth. And I will talk later the importance also of the moon interactions with the Earth. So we are in a very lucky situation in the universe, okay, where the sun has been shining for more than 5 billion years. And this has allowed Earth to have a very stable environment for a very, very long time. And this has allowed to develop life on Earth. So this is a very critical point. I would like to clarify a bit. So another important point, the position of the Earth inside the solar system. So we have, everybody knows, we have several planets along to the eclipses circulating around the sun, but the Earth in a special position is at the right distance from the sun, not too close and not too far, so that the temperature is what we experience, okay, on Earth. And this is very important, because if we were on Venus, life as we know would not be possible. If we were on Mars, is too cold. So, and the Earth is between in this, what the astronomers call the habitable zone. So it's what also the astronomers are looking in other solar systems outside ours to see whether there is life in other planets. They look in this range of habitable zone. So the other position, the other very important point is the position of the sun and the solar system within the galaxy. The galaxies is what we see when it's possible, when you see the Milky Way. This is there's a full of stars, so it's 100 millions of stars, but the sun is located in a very nice region, because if we were close to the galaxy center, we would experience a very strong gravitational forces that would tear apart the solar system. So the fact that the solar system is so stable is because it's located in a region outside the galaxy, far enough from the galaxy, from the galactic center. And this is, you may see, if you see the galaxy from another perspective, if you would see from above, you would see all these spiral arms where they're full of stars, and the sun is practically almost at the edge, which allows also for billions of years to stay in a stable and quiet zone. The other importance is the Earth, of course, the ambience where we grew up and when we developed. So as you know, the Earth has an atmosphere, which is oxygen, nitrogen, and so on. But it has also a magnetosphere, which is generated by the magnetic field. Everybody knows there is a North Pole, a South Pole, and this magnetic field is also varying in the time. But what this allows us, it allows us at all these lines around the Earth that concentrates when very high energetic particles that would damage our skin, our body, reach the Earth. They are deviated from these magnetic forces, so they are kept far away. So this is also important, that the environment is also safe for us, okay? We don't get bombarded by particles which may damage our bodies, you know very well, right? So if you are atomic bomb, yes, so it's similar gamma rays. Another critical point is the atmosphere. So we have the magnetosphere and we have the atmosphere which absorbs most of the damaging radiation. So if this is, I don't know if it's clear, but this is the transmission of the atmosphere, of the radiation from outside, against the energies of wavelengths and of particles and photons. So all these damaging radiation, gamma and X-ray, ultraviolets, are kept outside. So ultraviolet indeed may reach some of us. We get sunburn and we get also cancer, skin cancers. Yeah, but all the infrared and the microwaves and the radio can reach the Earth. These are not damaging radiation. This is also very important. And what I'm concentrating now is on the visible light, because our eye only sees the visible light. And this is very interesting, because it is the part of the electromagnetic spectrums which reaches the Earth. And our eye has developed in billions of times, so in a way that is sensitive only to the radiation from the close ultraviolet to the infrared. And you see, everybody has experienced the prism when you see the sun light scattered by you see a rainbow, or you see also the rainbow in particular days after the rain in the atmosphere. And these are the splitting of the radiation that our eye is able to see. And how the human eye works, I'm not a medical doctor, but just to let you know that once the radiation reaches the pupils and the lens is concentrated in the retina, and these are photoreceptors which are in practice only 3, red, green, and blue, and the combination of these makes us the experience of colors. And these are critical receptors converting the photons reaching the retina into electric signals, which goes to the nerves and to the brain. So the importance of light, I mean, Rainer shows these slides where the vision has the most information. I think this is critical because indeed through vision we get a lot of excitation in our brain. Not only we see things, okay, as I said, but also it allows, for instance, the blue light is very important because it stimulates the production of this hormone, which is called melanopsin. So here the doctors will explain better when it is, but it is important that it's stimulated by the blue light. And also the exposures to light in the morning where we have more blue and green light releases the cortisol, which stimulates us to wake up and so on, and inhibits the release of melatonin, which indeed comes back in the evening. So this is also critical. This is not a random achievement, but I think the evolution has adapted us very critical to the fact that we see and we are receiving this range of wavelengths. So the eyes is sensitive to this, and this brings to all the various stimulus to the brain. So again, this is just connected to this, is the fact that a few years ago, I guess, people were awarded by the Nobel Prize to have discovered this circadian rhythm, which is also very critical because it's, Fatke will tell you, this brings us it's very related to our healthy. And this is related to the fact that we have different hormones stimulated by the vision, and our cells respond to this according to the amount of light we see. So from the sun rising to the sunsets, there is several connection to the amount of light that are simulated in our brains and in the production of hormones and so on. The other, I think it's a fascinating point when we know we are composed of chemical elements, okay? Mostly important are carbon, oxygen, and nitrogen, which where all our cells are composed of these elements, and these chemical elements are produced by stars. So the sun is the second generation of stars since the beginning of the universe. So the first generation of stars have produced all elements which we are made for. And this is very important. Without the stars, we would not be able to have all these chemical elements. The stars live because they fuse protons, and protons produce helium. The fusion of heliums produce carbons, oxygen, and so on. And this makes the stars alive and keeps the star living. The nice property of the sun is that it's a small star. It doesn't use much energy. So it means that its life is very, very long, because if the star would have 10 times or 100 times the mass of the sun, would die in 100 million years. So there will not be possible to have life in the solar system. But those stars are critical because they produce all the chemical elements we are made for. So it's like a cycle. So the stars produce all the elements, they explode, they bring the elements into the stellar medium. From the interstellar medium, other stars form, and the second generation of star is our sun. This is also very important. What else also is important, when I said that the stars produce all the chemical elements, but they stop to iron. So they produce all from helium, nitrogen, or carbon, oxygen, and blah, 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 until iron. When iron is formed, the star stops producing chemical elements, because the production of other elements would be not anymore endothermic, but exothermic. So it means that the energy would be taken out and not produced. So the star doesn't produce any longer energy, but requests energy from outside to live. And then the star usually implodes and explodes. But I think it is important because in our blood there is iron. It's not, again, it's not a random achievement. The other final point, what I would like to remind, is, as mentioned by Patke, we are influenced by the motions of the Earth around the Sun, as you know. Okay, this is the year from the rotation of the Earth around its axis, which is the day, but also the Moon has a very critical influence on this system. So the Moon is a very peculiar satellite. Almost all planets have satellites, but the Moon, as you have maybe noticed, rotates synchronous to the Earth. So we always see the same face of the Moon. We don't see the dark side of the Moon. So and this has a peculiar effect on the gravitation. For instance, you know that the tides depends the location on the Moon, and they are at morning and in the evening and so on. And also there are people thinking that the Moon has also effect on the women menstruation. But this is not, well, I went through a lot of literature and there is not a consensus on this. What is thought is that indeed it's not, again, a random achievement that the women menstruation cycle is exactly the lunar cycle. But there are not measurements on this, not proven on statistics, but what the scientists tend to agree is that indeed was the case before we were switched to too much civilization, where we are also affected by the light, the artificial light, by the stress and so on. So this might be completely decoupled. So to summarize, I think, I hope I made it myself understanding. We are really in a lucky position in the galaxy and in the solar system itself, which made the Earth a very lucky planet to make life possible. The Earth has been living for almost 5 billion years, exactly as the life of the Sun, and it has developed so slowly that allows the life to develop from very simple cellular systems up to ourselves, which are very complicated systems. And I hope that, so I made it clear that the Earth atmosphere protects life, so it keeps the environment so stable and for a long time, that allows the possibility of life to develop also as so long. I hope the human beings will not be so stupid to destroy it. So I hope I made it clear that we are very dependent on the visible light, so the light from the Sun that is arriving on Earth. This is also very interesting. And we are made of chemical elements produced by stars. And so we are part of a cycle of the universe. And also that the Moon is also influencing the way the Earth behaves in the terms of gravitation, that's for sure. But surely we are influenced also by the light of the Moon. So when it's at full moon or new moon. So I hope I made it, I stop here.
Well, thank you so much, Paula. We will now have some focus from the general to some specific interesting things. And the next speaker is Professor Dr. Lena Förke. She is a professor in charge of the Department of Integrative Medicine in a university called Erskine Medical College in Pune, India. And this is not written here. This is the largest department of this type in whole India. And is very new, and her university supports this work very much, which is great. And she is physiology and mind-body medicine in Harvard, the most important mind-body medicine place in the world, but it will change now to Pune. And she researches more than 20 years now, especially with autonomic science things in a lot of diseases like diabetes, cardiology, neurology, and so on, and also in yoga. Okay, so I'm very happy to hear the lecture now of Dr. Lena Förke.
Okay, so let me begin with thanks, namaskar, thanks to Yoga Forum for giving me this opportunity to speak in this wonderful symposia. The previous speaker has given you the idea about the external rhythm that affects the human body. Now I will try to share my views on the internal rhythms of the body, which entrain with the external rhythm in order to make the survival possible. And one of the important system that entrains us with the external world is autonomic nervous system. So my whole work is in this field of autonomic neuroscience, and especially with yoga. This is my department of integrative research where I work as an head. We have started our mind-body medicine OPD in 23. Then the integrative medicine research department was inaugurated in August 24. And till now, we have worked more than 2,000 patients. We have worked on more than 2,000 patients. So I will try to give you an idea about the data that we have collected on these patients in different types of experiments. So this is what our lab is, autonomic lab, where we do the research, and this is the recent workshop that we have conducted for all the paramedics and the yoga teachers, and where Reinhard, Dr. Fadke, all of them were there, and we have tried to give this idea about the functioning, the clinimetrics, the autonomic nervous system to the yoga teachers as well as the physiotherapists and paramedics. Those who are directly linked with the healthcare givers. They are the healthcare givers. All of you know that the practical purpose of Ashtanga Yoga is to generate positive experiences through regulation. And these positive experiences could be cognitive experiences, they could be emotional experiences, or sensory, even the sensory experiences. But positive experiences through regulation. The key points to ponder is that generation of these positive experiences, especially by Yogasana, it requires precision of practice. So how you practice are going to decide what kind of experiences that you are going to generate. And secondly, Ashtanga Yoga, as Dr. Fadke said, that it practically principally works on the biophysics of human body, that is on the vrittis, what is called in Yoga Sutra as vrittis, or cyclical process in brain. And the consequence, you can say the changes that you see in biochemistry is the consequence of changes in this biophysics. So primarily the Ashtanga Yoga works on the brain processes and it changes the biochemistry, and that's how you get the effect on the body, on the rest of the body. So let's see the regulation. In human body, you have this three distinct way to regulate the internal system. What we call it as a homeostasis, allostasis, and voluntary control. All of them, they are important. All of them, they have their own pros and cons. Now, let's see what are their limitations. So I have just given a good kind of, to give you a comparison between the three regulatory mechanism. The response in homeostasis is reactive. That means it responds to correct a deviation from the fixed set point. Like if your blood pressure increases because of some stimulus, then all the homeostatic mechanisms, they act and try to bring the blood pressure back to normal. So this is how the homeostasis works. Allostasis, it is more of predictive. What it do? It adjusts the set points in anticipation of the future need. What you see in typically the cycles, the rhythms that are there, day and night rhythms, why they are there? They prepare you to do some kind of activity in the morning and they give you the rest in the evening or in the night. So the rhythms are meant to provide this allostatic. We will talk about it in details afterward. And third control mechanism is the voluntary, where mostly it is the cognitive control, where it uses our conscious and it directs our behavior. The time frame in which these three regulatory mechanism works, homeostasis, it's almost immediate short-term responses. Allostasis, they are anticipatory responses as well as they are sustained responses to stress. While voluntary is a mixed one, both it works in short-term, long-term, as well as you can say intermediate or immediate effect. Then it is regulated by different areas of the brain. Homeostasis mainly controlled by the lower part of the brain, that is medulla and pons, or we call it as a brainstem. Allostasis mainly involves the whole brain. Along with that, it involves multiple physiological system, may it be immune system, endocrine axis. So all these systems act together in order to give allostatic control. And the voluntary, mainly it involves the prefrontal cortex and other higher areas of the brain. So this voluntary system, which involves the higher centers, they via your homeostatic mechanism or allostatic mechanism try to change the internal states of the body. Limitations of these systems: the homeostasis only corrects the existing imbalances, does not account for dynamic changes. Allostasis, it can predict, but uh, if the allostasis is used for a long period of time by body for say combating the stress, then it has a negative burden on the body. So it's a main limitation of allostatic control. Then voluntary, it highly dependent on the motivation and the willpower of the individual. So all these have their own limitations, and that's why probably we are having three systems to control so as to minimize the errors. Where the autonomic nervous system fits into this: the autonomic reflexes which are there in the body, they mainly determine the feedback mechanism. They work through feedback mechanism involved in homeostasis. The endogenous rhythms that are there in autonomic, it is mainly important for allostasis. And all the yoga practices or MBM practices, breathing practices that we do, by voluntary modulation of autonomic, you get the results. So this is where the autonomic fits into all these three categories of regulation, and different types of experiments can give you idea about this, and I will discuss them in few minutes of time. So now the ANS, something about the ANS. It's a very important key regulator for survival, fastest link between brain and internal organs. It's a bidirectional communication. It has a bidirectional communication, that is a ANS acts on a body and it receives the impulses or sensations from the body and changes its output. It regulates all vital functions, may it be circulation, digestion, excretion, body temperature, genitourinary. Most importantly, it affects energy metabolism, and this I think is a very important for survival. We will talk about it, but just remember, autonomic is a key player for energy metabolism. Two divisions are there: sympathetic, parasympathetic. Like they act like accelerator and brake in the body on different organs. Different interactions are there, but generally if you take the heart, Then sympathetic, it like acts like an accelerator to the heart, and parasympathetic like brake to heart. While if you take GIT, our gut, then it is the parasympathetic which is accelerator and sympathetic is a brake. So they have a mutually opposing effect on each other, but in different organs they have different effects. So this is how the parasympathetic and sympathetic looks like, their network connection. Now, if you have already seen that how the solar system has evolved. Now let's see how the ANS is evolved. Now, if you see over it's definitely not in the billions of scale, it's in the millions. So around first thing that is to develop in autonomic nervous system is the dorsal vagus nucleus, which actually is responsible for bringing down the metabolism, though it is not that good for survival of warm-blooded animals, and therefore I think over a period of time with the evolution, newer and newer modalities of autonomic has been introduced. So first to develop is dorsal vagus nucleus, then the sympathetic system, which allowed the animal to generate a fight and flight response. So either you have to fight for the survival or you have to fly from the situation to survive. So, but if this mechanism is there without any control, then also might have a detrimental effects on the body, and therefore over a period of millenniums, a new system, that is a new vagal complex, ventrovagal complex, which we called as new vagus, it is developed, which has a mostly the inhibitory control over the sympathetic system. So it checks the sympathetic system. And therefore in diabetes, if you take, whenever there is a neuropathy that happens, it is the first, the vagal fibers, new vagal fibers, they get damaged, and therefore sympathetic overdrive occurs, and then it has its own consequences. So that's how all these three evolutionary development, they have adjusted to the external environment for makes us important for survival. Then they generate three important behavioral states. Whenever they get activated, you get three important states in the body. One is called as social engagement system or social engagement state. When you are at rest, then you can communicate with others properly. You are not having any kind of hostile feeling with others. So that kind of internal state which happens, it's because of the new vagal fibers. Then the second is the fight situation, where you perceive the threat and your energy need for the body is at that time is more. So naturally the sympathetic system gets activated. And if the threat is too severe for the body, then sometimes body completely shuts down, which is called as immobilization, which usually occurs because of activation of old vagus. But the shutting down is not good for survival, because our human body is highly dependent upon the temperature. Shutting down decreases the temperature, makes the living impossible. So that's why the mobilization and social engagement system, they, I think, got the predominance rather than the shutting or immobilization kind of thing in human body. Then ANS, as you have to entrain with the external world. So practically ANS responds to all kind of stimuli, whether external or internal, may it be cognitive, emotion, social interaction, postures, physical activity, food, environment, humidity, magnetic field. So whatever Dr. Paula has mentioned about the kind of stimuli which are there in external world, practically ANS respond to them all. Now let's see the example how ANS contributes into how the yoga also contributes into the homeostasis. Now just I will not go into medical jargon, but autonomic reflexes, they governs the homeostasis, and all these reflexes, they work around a specific set points. Like for our blood pressure, we have a natural design for the set points, that your systolic blood pressure will be say between the range of 120 to 140, and diastolic between the range of say 60 to 90, and anywhere your blood pressure can vary. So there are fixed set points around which the homeostatic mechanisms work. But sometimes it happens that your Because suppose if you have to face some kind of stressful situation, your blood pressure might increase more than to the specific set points, and that is done by the allostatic mechanisms. So homeostatic work around the set points. Now, the experiment that we have done with this yoga naive individual, where we have recorded their cardiac autonomic control or the heart rate variability when they are doing modified asana and when they are doing exercise. So this is what is the phasic control of autonomic that we have tried to find. And what we have observed in this is that there is a vagal withdrawal. That means parasympathetic system gets withdrawn in all the asanas as well as in exercise, which we have published in a medical journal, where we have it's a cardiac autonomic modulation during yoga posture and cycling, and acute state effect, that is for phasic change that happens, is vagus withdrawal, which is almost similar to what we see in exercise. So whether you do aerobic exercise, whether you do any kind of gym training, whether you do weight training, everywhere vagus is always withdrawn during exercise. The same pattern is seen in the yoga naive individual. So when the individual starts with yoga, it almost looks like an exercise. The effect in the body is almost like an exercise, which is good. I'm not saying it is bad, but it is definitely, we will see later on that whether this is what is expected from yoga or not. So this is what you see. Then let's see the next point is an ANS and allostasis, how ANS contributes into it. So you have a natural rhythm in autonomic nervous system, which is activity and dependent and energy consumption dependent. During the daytime, you are having sympathetic predominance because you have to use energy, you have to mobilize yourself for the work. While in the night time, it is mainly the parasympathetic which predominates. Therefore, your heart rate dips down, your blood pressure dips down during night. And the presence of this endogenous rhythm is a sign of health. If we lose this endogenous rhythm, we are progressing towards disease. So these are the graphs where you can see the parasympathetic system. It actually increases during, it predominates during night time while it decreases in the morning hours. So there is this natural vagal rhythm that is there. It changes with age. So in a young age, a good vagal rhythm is there in the night compared to as we get old. So with the aging itself, there is a change in rhythm. As well as there is a change in rhythm when we progress towards disease. In the next graph, you see the risk. I will show you in my studies also. So remember this, that the endogenous rhythm is very important sign of health, and changes occurs age-wise also. And when we get the disease, there is a disruption of this rhythm. So these are our some photographs where we have conducted the study for endogenous rhythm, assessing the endogenous rhythm in the individual. So we admitted the normal individuals for 24 hours and then recorded the heart rate variability. This paper we have published, and it's received an award in Ahmedabad also. The very important thing to remember is that this allostasis, what I have talked about, is the prediction or the rhythms that are there. It has a dimension. Resilience, what you all call as resilience, is the successful outcome of the process of allostasis. So if your allostasis, it succeeds, then it builds resilience. But if the allostasis, it persists for a long period of time, it doesn't shut off, it is called as impaired allostasis, and it leads to accumulation of allostatic load, which is not good for the body. So presence of allostasis, exposure to this allostatic mechanism in a systematic way is good for resilience building, but uncontrolled exposure to this allostatic mechanism for a long period is detrimental to body. This is what happens with allostatic load, that you can see this is the set point around which the homeostasis works. In allostatic load, there is a change in the set point, and this change in set point is beyond the limits of our natural design. So if it goes beyond the natural limits, then it acts as a load, and definitely it has a detrimental effect. Interestingly, this autonomic nervous system rhythm is tightly linked with other biological rhythm. May it be sleep, may it be neuroendocrine rhythm, may it be immune system rhythm. It is linked with that. So whatever change that happens in autonomic can reflect either in your sleep or in endocrine mechanism or immune functioning. And how that link is there? So there are pathways through which the autonomic, it influences the endocrine axis. So it is the vagus, the afferent vagus fibers, it affects or it has an effect on HPA axis, specifically the paraventricular nucleus, from where the hormone is released which acts on the pituitary gland, and then further down you get different hormones. So if the ANS rhythm changes, it has an effect on the endocrine rhythm. Similarly, vagal efferent fibers. So again, it's vagus. It's efferent fibers which have a anti-inflammatory effect on anti-inflammatory pathway. So if we stimulate the vagus, then via this pathway, it affects the immune rhythm also. And as I have mentioned, that if the new vagal fibers are damaged because of, say, diabetes, then the sympathetic system, it overrides the rhythm. So what it means overrides, that in the night time when the sympathetic should go down and the parasympathetic should go up, it doesn't happen. The sympathetic remains upregulated throughout day and night, and therefore then it has a consequential effect on the rest of the body. So over sympathetic drive is known to be associated with all NCDs. So this is the literature that you can find, that failure of the allostasis, ANS allostasis, leads to NCDs. Our own experiments with 24-hour BP monitoring, you can see over here in this table, in normotensive individuals, 41% of them, there is a non-dipping state. That means the BP that should go down in the night time, in 41% people who we call normal, because their daytime BP is normal, but nighttime BP doesn't go down. And I think this is what is the allostatic load, which if it untapped, if we don't do over here anything, then over a period of time person lands up into the hypertension. So that's why I think this is the area where we should focus more. Now, as Dr. Phadke has told about the clinimetrics, so we have measured about 400 patients. This is the data of 400 patients that I am telling you, where the patients have come from all walks of life. They might have a comorbidity, diabetes, hypertension, or they have anxiety, depression. They are referred from psychiatry. So from different departments, even from the orthopedics, so from different departments, those patients who are coming to us with different problems, they have this feature very, very common. One, all of them, most of them, that is 71% of them, they are having sleep issues. GI issues about 41%, fatigue almost 60%, 61% patients, they have a kind of fatigue issue. Overthinking, 60% people. And I'm telling you, these are the things which are not been routinely covered by the pharmacotherapy. So somewhere we have to bring these non-pharmacological approaches which can affect all these issues and can improve the quality of life of patients. So along with pharmacotherapy, if we are able to join these two, I think we will get better results. Engagement of daily works. Yes, with diseases, people are less motivated to do their normal routine work. So this is what the data suggests us, that we have to do something about this. Then let's see how the yoga experiment have shown that whether it works for allostasis or not. So we have done a direct comparison between exercise and yoga, where we have observed that yes, yoga is a mild aerobic activity. Then we have recorded heart rate variability when the person is doing yogasana, thanks to Yoga Forum, because I have done my most of the experiments on the Yoga Forum people and practitioners. So when you record it, your heart rate variability during yogasana in experienced person or experienced yoga practitioner, and when you record it on yoga naive individual who has been trained for 1.5 years, with yoga. So, what kind of changes in the autonomic response that you see is what we have observed. This very important differential modulation of awareness during yogasana in yoga practitioners, experienced yoga practitioner. What it means, what we have observed is a graded withdrawal of the vagus, and secondly, in some asanas we have observed vagal augmentation. As I have mentioned you that no exercises shows vagal augmentation during exercise, but here you have a kind of asanas where few asanas show vagal withdrawal, while few asanas like Sarvangasana, Shirshasana, where head down posture is there, there is a vagal augmentation. But this doesn't happen in a naive practitioner. In what it means is that the autonomic nervous system learns over a period of time. It learns to respond to that stimulus in a different way, and that is what is the allostasis. It changes. It changes the set points or maybe the reactivity of the system. This is what the training effect that you see. Low resting heart rate is seen after 1 year of training. That means increased parasympathetic modulation during rest, which you can see in exercise also. But in yogasana also, it happens. That means the system is getting modified. It is becoming more and more resilient. And secondly, less increase in heart rate after 1 year of training suggestive that the asana become more and more relaxing because you are requiring less energy to perform that asana. Less the energy, less the workload on the heart. So it is more and more relaxing. So if you do asana in a relaxed way, then definitely you are going to have a much better results. Then training effect, specifically you can see over here that less vagal withdrawal during Tadasana, that is what we have observed. That means system reactivity is being changed, and higher vagal influence during Sarvangasana. So after 1 year of training, where initially there is vagal withdrawal, now there is vagal augmentation. What it indicates is that it takes time for system to get modulated. So allostasis, if you want to bring any change in allostasis, it requires time to change that. And this is what Dr. Phadke, he has shown that yoga practitioner have shown more variability, means more adaptability. You can say the autonomic adaptability is there compared to diabetes and diabetic complications. Now let's see the last part, that how yogasana has an effect on voluntary control or voluntary control has an effect on yoga. So this is what I think it's very important, that whether we are having the pathways, the voluntary pathways which can modulate the autonomic nervous system, because by name itself autonomic means it works on its own. So initially the physiologists, they believe that this system cannot be modulated by will, but now we know that there are pathways, and if we activate them in a proper way, we can directly reach to autonomic. So this is what the central autonomic network, where prefrontal cortex, the front part of your brain, it has a lot of influence on the lower parts of this autonomic nervous system. Then this is a concept, physiological concept. We know that respiratory sinus arrhythmia is there. That means during inhalation, the heartbeat increases, while during exhalation, it decreases. That means by manipulating your breath, you can directly influence the heart rate. You can directly influence the heart. So that capability is there. Whether we use it or not, it depends on us. Then this is a very important experiment that we have done. That same asana we have told the practitioner to do it in a much forceful way and then in the relaxed way. And what we have observed is that when you do the asana in a relaxed way, your heart rate variability is different. It is more by compared to when you do the asana in a forceful way. What it means is that when you do forcefully, it is more like exercise. When you do in a relaxed way, it is more like yogasana. So what effect that you want on the autonomic, it's totally on your will. If you forcefully do the thing, same asana turned into exercise. If you do it in a relaxed way, same asana is yogasana. So proper voluntary action, effortlessness holds the key to generate relaxation and comfort during yogasana. And this is what is expected in Patanjali Yoga Sutra also. That what is asana? It is sthira sukha asanam. That means the asana should be comfortable and stable. The time frame to see the effect on quality life, sleep improvement, it's very fast. While resilience building, if you want to change the reactivity or adaptability of autonomic, it requires longer time. The little bit more work that we are doing on autonomic is in predictive medicine, where disturbances in autonomic can predict in future the development of getting a kind of cardiovascular events or not. So we are working on that, and this is the paper that we have published with our data. This is the paper on same topic we have presented in Berlin in our Diabetes Association conference. So in nutshell, in summary, in yoga naive individual, autonomic modulation during asana is similar to exercise. Vagal withdrawal in all asanas. It reflects more or less homeostatic regulatory mechanism which dominates. Differential modulation during different asanas in experienced yoga practitioner, it indicates allostatic adaptation and learning of autonomic nervous system, making system more resilient. And voluntary regulation fine tunes the ANS response, and proper voluntary effortlessness, it holds the key to generate relaxation and comfort during yoga asana. Thank you for the patient listening. Thank you so much. Over to you.
Thank you. Thank you very much for this wonderful lecture, which explains very simple and very clear how yoga works and what we have to do. So, next speaker will be Professor Shivram Barampalli. He is from this National Institute, which is like a Max Planck Institute in German terms, of India, only institute which deals with basic things of mental health and neuroscience, and they have a lot of patients and they do also research. And he is professor there for psychiatry. He was the first head of the Department of Integrative Medicine, which was announced by the Indian government to have one. Integrative medicine means integrate modern Western medicine, Ayurveda and yoga in one department. Of course, there is much more, but I will give the time to Professor Shivram Barampalli to please have this lecture.
Guten Morgen to people in Munich. Very nice to hear you, Reinhard. Of course, it's good afternoon in India. So as Reinhard explained, I am a psychiatrist, but because of my interest in yoga and integrative medicine, I've been working in this area for almost 15-20 years now. And I was listening to Dr. Leena's presentation. She has given quite a lot of details about the autonomic nervous system and how it works. So I'm not going to go much into that aspect. I'm going to talk about clinical research that we have done at NIMHANS. So what you see in the background of the slide is the place where I work out of. That's the garden which is next to my office in NIMHANS. So it's a very beautiful place. Reinhard, of course, has been here. So what I am going to try and do in the next 25 minutes is focus on what is the importance of yoga for healthcare. All of us know now that healthcare has become, unfortunately, fragmented. I will give you a very brief example. I had a person referred to me from Pune who had 3 operations in his right hand. One in the shoulder, one in the elbow, and one in the wrist for some pain, and done by 3 different surgeons who are specialists in doing only that surgery. One person does only wrist, one person does only elbow, one person does only shoulder, and unfortunately, even after 3 surgeries, the pain had not gone away. And then he was referred to psychiatry. He had psychosomatic disorder. So this is the tragedy of healthcare today, that each person looks at only, like a horse, what they can see, and they don't really look at the holistic angle. Technology has helped in some ways. although not made a huge difference. And this information overload on the internet has made every patient confused with the amount of information, and the doctors are worried, and they practice what we now call as defensive medicine, that you order all the tests possible for every patient so that you don't miss anything, otherwise you will be blamed later. This situation is even worse in mental health. We did a recent survey, NIMANS was part of the survey in India, where we showed that 1 in 4 patients will have 1 in 4 of the population will have some mental health disorder, but unfortunately, that only 1/4 of them actually get treatment. 75% are never treated for their problem, and COVID has exacerbated some of these problems, although teletherapy may have helped in some place. But this last, what I have put in the slide, the prevention of mental health is not on the agenda for most countries at all. It's not part of the healthcare scheme at all. So you treat people who are ill, but how to prevent people to become ill, that is not happening at all. Even if you look at psychiatric treatments, and of course it is also true for physical treatments for physical disorders, we have good medications, but they have their own problems. You need to take it for a very long period of time. Most people do not do that. They stop their medicines. We have psychotherapy, which are very good in non-neurotic, non-psychotic conditions, but how many psychotherapists are available for the population is very, very less. We have newer treatments like neurostimulation at a preliminary stage. Again, even here, positive mental health remains a missing piece. And I'm sure Dr. Phadke has spoken about some of these issues in the morning. So this is one of the people I admire. Fritjof Capra was a physicist who has now trained his attention on health. And he says that particularly in the nervous disorders, we have lost our way by treating man as a machine and not a human being. So we need to really look at how to go back to our holistic angle, which was there a few centuries back. What is the problem with our current approaches? As Dr. Leena was talking to you just 10 minutes ago, nobody has really looked at this allostatic load, particularly in the context of psychiatric disorders. So the evidence now suggests that psychiatric disorders are systemic disorders like any other physical disorders or chronic conditions like diabetes, hypertension, so depression, and very similar to that. So we can't really just treat them with a very small window and expect them to get better. And this brings us to what we call as the dimensional model of health. So what Dr. Leena was talking about, most people in the healthy group would hopefully be in the green or the blue ends of this diagram, whereas we see most people who are in the orange or the red phases already. They've already become ill, they already have disease complications. How not to go from the blue is the question that we have to answer, because once they come into the red state, of course, they would need modern medical treatment. And I'm sure all of you have explained this. I'm not going to spend much time. Allostasis is something that has become a big focus in the recent years, although still not accepted very much in the psychiatric kind of things. What causes this allostatic load? Of course, a lot of challenges: COVID, climate change, personal causes, psychosocial causes. But one important thing to understand is that if our brain is not given a proper direction, that itself becomes a source of allostatic load. Say, for example, people who are addicted to reels or mobile phones, the mobile phone itself becomes a source of allostatic load. It is originally intended as something to make our life easier, but now it is actually going the other way. And what is the impact of this on health? If you read this article, a review article, it says that whenever the allostatic load is more, it leads to poorer health outcomes. Dr. Vaishali Deshmukh, one of our collaborators and a diabetologist, often gives an example of patients with diabetes or thyroid disorders who are now told that your thyroid is normal. Your biochemistry says you are normal, your diabetes is in control, but the patient says, oh, I am not feeling better. You are telling me that my sugar is okay, but I don't feel well. So this is because the other part of the equation, which is the allostatic load, hasn't been handled. So where do we need to look at? We need to look at what we call as the PNIE network or the paradigm, where all these things work together. The central nervous system, the autonomic nervous system, our hormones, the immune system, and the gut. Unless we look at all these angles, the person's wellness will not improve. Biochemistry may show improvement, but the person doesn't feel well. Now, this is the problem in most of the chronic physical disorders as well. And what are the common factors in this, what we call NCDs, non-communicable disorders? Inflammation, oxidative stress, insulin resistance, which is becoming more and more common, autonomic dysfunction, as Dr. Leena was saying, immune alterations, neurohormonal imbalances, and what we now talk about as neuroplasticity, the ability of our nervous system to repair itself or rewire itself is impaired. Now, these are the problems which are common in all the NCDs, whether it is physical or mental. On the other hand, what should we be looking at? We call as the pillars of health. Dr. Phadke talks about this often. How is the person's sleep? How is the digestive health, vitality, and engagement of the mind? These are the pillars of health which we are neglecting in our race to make the biochemistry better. How to go about this? If you look at this advice by Yuval long back, he said you can only have a healthy mind if your body is okay, and the reverse is also true. So to translate this into practice, we need, of course, to give specific treatments for disorders, but we need to add something that reduces the allostatic load, and we don't aim at just remission of a disorder. We have to attain health. So we have to build resilience. And even Professor Hutchison, who we all look up to in terms of who taught us how to examine patients, he warns against the idea that everything new is good and everything old is bad. He has warned us this long back. And if you look at the Indian traditional formula from health, this is from the Bhagavad Gita, it says that, everything has to be done in moderation, whether it is exercise, whether it is food, whether it is sleeping, whether it is dreaming. If you keep everything in moderation and follow a yogic lifestyle, then you can have an end to most of your sufferings. This is where, Bhagavad Gita says, and we need not look very far back. This book, published in maybe around 75 years back, really talks about yoga as the Indian psychology, as a mind-body science. This is the root of all the positive psychology that now people are waking up to. So what we talked about, the pillars of health, all these factors, yoga has been shown to have significant beneficial effects on all these factors. So that is why we are saying that yoga is the ideal allostatic load reducer for a variety of conditions. And this graph, which I told you some time back, how to reverse this, how to come back from the red towards the green or the blue, yoga can help. So what does it do? It is a biophysical method of restoring order or the rhythm of the human body and mind. And it has been not only saying, by people like me or Dr. Phadke or Reinhardt, people have started understanding this, and this, review talks about what yoga can do to reduce allostatic load in people with depression and anxiety. As Dr. Leena explained, yoga works through various mechanisms, primarily the autonomic nervous system, but also hormonal and immune systems. The PNIE network, what we talk about, yoga has effect on all these systems in the body. The good thing is that in the last few years or maybe decades, research on yoga and brain health has been increasing exponentially. If you look at particularly from around the new millennium, it has gone up very, very significantly. And one of the contributors has been my institute, that is NIMHANS in Bangalore, which is a big neuropsychiatric hospital with more than 1,200 beds and has evolved from a lunatic asylum to a modern neurosciences institute where more than, around, I don't know, I think 0.6 million people come every year for treatment. Yoga is not a new thing in NIMHANS. It has been ongoing since the late 1970s. And over the years, we have brought it up to a level of a center and now a department of integrative medicine. And these are the people who made it possible. Dr. D. Nagaraj, who was the original mentor, and Dr. Gangadhar, whom I think you heard this morning, were the people who made it possible. The current department, this is staffed by I am a part of the department, but Dr. Kishore is the current head of the department. We have a yoga faculty. We have a psychiatrist, Dr. Bharat. Dr. Umesh is an Ayurveda doctor. We have scientists, and we have a social worker also attached, Dr. Aarti, with the department. So what does the clinical research say on yoga and mental health? If you look at a meta-analysis kind of a study, the effect size in favor of yoga across all psychiatric disorders is a very strong -3. We have looked at particularly the severe disorders at NIMHANS. Let me start with the commonest disorder, which is depression. This is again a meta-analysis not done by us, by Kramer, Holger Kramer, who is now the editor of the Journal of, I think, of Complementary Integrative Medicine. Which this shows very clearly that yoga works as an antidepressant with a fairly good effect size. Our first study done by Professor Janaki Ramaiah, Dr. Gangadhar at NIMHANS, first randomized controlled trial of yoga as a sole treatment in depression showed that yoga works as well as an antidepressant, although ECT, electroconvulsive therapy, had a slightly better effect. Yoga and imipramine almost had a very similar effect. We repeated a 3-arm trial a few years back where we were again able to show that yoga works as well as a medication. And not only that, as I will show later, it had more neuroplastic effects than the medicine. There are some recent randomized controlled trials outside of India which have used yoga as a sole treatment, monotherapy, has showed that it reduces depression and it can be done even in people with suicidal ideation. The other major disorder that psychiatrists treat and very difficult to treat is schizophrenia. Here also NIMHANS has done a lot of work. The first study published in 2007 showed that yoga actually improved symptoms more than physical exercise. Dr. Leena was talking about the difference of yoga and physical exercise. Basically, it says how you do it is what matters rather than the actual posture. You have to do it in a very relaxed manner and focus on the breathing, which is not really done in exercise. We repeated in a funded study published in 2012, and we were able to show that particularly negative symptoms of schizophrenia, which is very difficult to treat with medications, responded fairly well to yoga. And these two studies were quoted by the NICE guidelines in the UK to add yoga as a complementary treatment in schizophrenia in 2014, based on these two studies from NIMHANS. So as I said, the primary effect is on negative symptoms, which is the part of schizophrenia that is resistant to antipsychotic medicines. So this is a very welcome thing, because what it does, it tells us is that if you combine modern medical treatment, people with schizophrenia need antipsychotics. If you combine yoga with that, it gives a very good result, which could lead to them needing less medication, which is a great thing for everybody. And this is a randomized, controlled, multi-center trial done by one of my colleagues, Dr. Naren, including another center in Chennai, which showed a very good effect size of 0.65 for reduction in negative symptoms, which is a remarkable thing for a non-pharmacological intervention. Not only that, we have been able to show that yoga also improves what we call as social cognition, ability to understand the emotions of other people, which is a big problem in disorders like schizophrenia and autism, where the person cannot understand what the other person is feeling. Yoga, medicine does not again help it very much, but yoga, we were able to show that it improved it very significantly. Most of the earlier studies on schizophrenia and depression were short-term studies of 3 months, but we have recently completed a study and we have published in Schizophrenia Research. This was my funded YScan study where we have followed people up to 6 months and showed that the effects persist for 6 months, if not longer. So we are very now fairly clear that yoga has a very strong antidepressant action. Yoga can help patients with schizophrenia, particularly with negative symptoms, and these effects have a very good effect size and can last for as long as the patient continues to do yoga. Other than that, we have also looked at other areas. I'm not going to focus on a lot of things because of the time limit today, but one example is cognition in the elderly. All of us moving towards the 50s and the 60s, that's our major worry. What will happen to us? What will happen to our memory? And this 6-month study in elderly people above the age of 60, 65 showed that 6 months of yoga clearly improved their cognition, both memory and non-memory cognition, quite significantly. So to summarize the clinical research, particularly studies from NIMHANS, what I would say here, as you can see in the slide here, is that not only we have been able to show that yoga improves symptoms, whether it is depression, schizophrenia, cognitive impairment, but also shows us a biological mechanism by which this is happening. It could be cortisol and BDNF, brain-derived neurotrophic factor in depression. It could be other things in schizophrenia, and I will talk about that later, but this is important. So we have to show scientifically that yoga works, but also how it works. There are some disorders we still have to do. Alcohol dependence, we have shown significant improvement and some biological parameters. Anxiety, other disorders, we are still actually doing the research. But the interesting thing for people, especially scientists, is how does this happen? And there we need to bring in this principle, what is called as Hebb's law. Donald Hebb gave this way back in 1949. What he said is that neurons that fire together wire together. So by repeated practice, you can train your brain, you can actually rewire your brain, which is something that even computers of today cannot do. This is the amazing ability of the human nervous system. And we often talk about a vicious cycle, something that gets worse and worse. You can also start a virtuous cycle. A small change can lead to a large effect in the brain and the nervous system. And this has been shown fairly conclusively that long-term yoga practitioners, Reinhard is an example, lose less brain tissue as they get older. If you don't do anything, all of us will lose some brain tissue as we age. If you do yoga, that would become less. The rate of loss would become less, which is what is going to keep us active into our late 70s or 80s. We have also shown that yoga can improve the ability of the brain to inhibit things which are not needed. Cortical inhibition improves very significantly after practice of yoga, both in healthy individuals as well as patients with depression. Why is this important? As you know, when people are depressed, they ruminate. They think of something they don't want to think about, but it keeps happening. This is the work of what we call as GABA. GABA aminobutyric acid. Its work is to stop things that we don't want to happen in our brain. In depression, that is a problem. Yoga restores this ability to inhibit things that you do not want happening in your brain. On the other hand, neuroplasticity, brain-derived neurotrophic factor, BDNF, is a marker of this ability, reduced this in depression, and after yoga, it increases. This also happens with other treatments with depression, but as you know, we take medicines and we stop, this effect goes away. Hopefully, if we continue doing yoga, we will not get depressed again. That is why yoga is important in depression, not so much for treatment. We have very good antidepressant treatments, but how do you stop the depression from coming back? yoga is one of the answers. Not only that, we have been able to show in our study that yoga also modulates the immune inflammatory pathway, which is also overactive in all the non-communicable disorders. Yoga is able to reduce the inflammation and the overactive immune markers. So in this study, the Y-scan study, we were able to show clinical improvement. We also were able to show some brain changes, which I'm going to talk about. Not only that, we were able to show gene expression changes in oxytocin. A simple study done by Kalyani, Dr. Gangadhar's daughter, when she was an MBBS student, showed that a simple Om chanting can actually modulate brain activity, reduce activity in the limbic system of the brain, which is responsible for most of our negative emotions, anxiety, fear. This all centers in the limbic system. Simple Om chanting was able to reduce the activity in this area. And there is a very good study showing that particularly women who practice long-term yoga and meditation, actually their brain loses less gray matter as the age. In people with schizophrenia, we have shown, this is in healthy elderly people, we have shown that over 6 months, there is actually a small increase in the size of the hippocampus, which is critical for memory. This is an amazing finding. We are trying to replicate it now because most of us, as we age, we lose brain area, brain matter. And at people with 60, 65, if they can gain brain matter, this is an amazing finding, for all of us. So let me come to the end of my presentation. If you put all these things together, yoga to multiple mechanisms, whether it is reduction in cortisol, the stress hormone, increase in brain-derived neurotropic factor, improved cognitive related potentials, cortical modulation, all this leads to the symptom improvement and reduced risk of relapse, which is the most important thing. Similarly, in schizophrenia, multiple mechanisms are there scientifically, which actually lead to the improvement. So we have tried to put many of this, our research together in this book, which is available on Amazon, called The Science and Art of Yoga and Mental and Neurological Healthcare, published through the Indian Psychiatric Society. So I don't know whether it is available in Germany. Hopefully it should be. And what is our outlook for the future of yoga and mental health? We need to continue this rigorous research on the effects of yoga practices and establish yoga as a science so that it is taken seriously by the medical profession. We need to design specific yoga programs based on a diagnosis as well as a yogic assessment of the guna or the dosha status. And of course, we need to use technology, which we are using today to talk to all of you, to overcome the barriers to reach more people. To summarize, I would say that we know that the current treatments for both physical and mental health disorders are suboptimal and does not address the wellness and the preventive aspects. So we need these treatments, disorder specific, but we also need treatment to reduce the allostatic load. Yoga is an example of a holistic approach which does what we want in addition to medication or other treatment. And as mental health professionals, we need to include this kind of approaches. I see a future in which a yoga therapist is an essential part of all the treatment teams in non-clinical, non-communicable disorders in all the hospitals across the world. It has actually become a reality, at least in NIMHANS. Maybe it could become a reality in many hospitals across the world. I would like to end by acknowledging all our collaborators, across from the government, from the NIMHANS team, my mentors, Professor Nagaraj and Dr. Gangadhar, Dr. Phadke, and of course the team at the Department of Integrative Medicine at NIMHANS. Hopefully this has been a useful session for all of you. I'm open to questions if we have time. I'll let Renard and team decide that. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for this wonderful lecture, and we will keep in contact outside of this session. Questions we thought people can ask per email, and then we will try to answer the questions, and we will also give them the video so that they can see, because I heard this part of it several times, and I every time understand something more of what you explain, so it's good to see it 2, 3, 4, 5 times. So thank you very much for this wonderful lecture, and we continue here with the next speaker, Dr. Klaus Post from Coburg in Bavaria, and he is head of the pain department. And this is a rare occasion, we can say, because not every hospital has a real developed pain medicine, and he is one of the leading pain medicine specialists in Germany. And he also knows about yoga, so he can show us how pain and yoga is related.
Ja, vielen Dank für die Einladung, Christine, Reinhard, dass ich hier sprechen darf. Die Frage ist ja jetzt auch, wie bekommen wir Yoga transformiert in den klinischen Alltag? Also wir hören, Yoga ist effektiv, Yoga wirkt auf das autonome Nervensystem, macht Neuroplastizität, lindert Schmerzen. Wir sind eine Klinik mit 600 Betten und ein Akutkrankenhaus, eine schulmedizinisch orientierte Klinik, ist ja ganz klar. Und Sie sehen hier unten unsere Tagesklinik. Wir haben ein Schmerzzentrum, das sich aus 14 Behandlungsplätzen zusammensetzt, mit einer Schmerzambulanz, ein medizinisches Versorgungszentrum. Wir versorgen im Jahr ungefähr 600 bis 700 Patienten mit chronischen Schmerzen. Der Schwerpunkt im Akutschmerz ist natürlich der Tumorschmerz, die akute Erkrankung, schwere Schmerzsyndrome. Was möchte ich Ihnen heute nahebringen? Also einmal, wir müssen uns natürlich, wenn wir über Schmerztherapieprogramme, wir nennen das in Deutschland Komplexbehandlung, multimodale Schmerztherapie, unterhalten, einmal grundsätzlich über die Neurobiologie von Schmerz. Wir müssen unterscheiden, dass akuter Schmerz ein anderer Schmerz ist als chronischer Schmerz. Wir haben die International Classification of Headache und auch die International Classification of Disease. Wir kennen da die Chronic Pain Disorder und wir behandeln durchgängig in unserer Tagesklinik also Patienten mit chronischen Schmerzen, und das möchte ich Ihnen etwas nahebringen. Und wir haben vor 6 Jahren begonnen, tatsächlich Yoga in unser Programm einzubeziehen, in ein interdisziplinäres, multimodales Programm. Also es ist kein isolierter Baustein Yoga, sondern das ist ein Baustein von verschiedenen Therapiemaßnahmen. Ja, also wir haben natürlich, und wie häufig auch jetzt schon gesehen, wir haben es mit dem Nervensystem zu tun, so wie Sie da sitzen. Tatsächlich haben Sie in dem gesamten Körper ein eigenes Nervensystem, was Schmerzen wahrnimmt. Es gibt kaum Strukturen in Ihrem Körper, die nicht mit Schmerznerven sozusagen versorgt sind. Gott sei Dank Ihre Haare, ne, sonst hätten Sie jeden Früh ein Problem beim Föhnen oder beim Haarschneiden, auch bei den Fingernägeln. Und tatsächlich im Gehirn selbst haben wir keine Nerven, die den Schmerz wahrnehmen. Wenn Sie eine Migräne haben, die werden wir uns nachher noch anschauen, dann haben wir Nervenfasern, die Schmerz wahrnehmen in unseren Meninken, aber im Gehirn selbst nicht. Genau, ich habe Ihnen mal ein Patientenbild mit, also Neurobiologie, funktionelle Bildgebung ist natürlich spannend. Sie sehen hier ein gesundes Gehirn, also einen gesunden Patienten, einen betroffenen Patienten. Was hat dieser Patient? Der Patient ist gestürzt, hat sich den Arm gebrochen, ist operiert worden, und dann hat man einen normalen Heilungsprozess und die Hand oder dieser Arm heilt aber nicht. Dieser Patient, der hat ein Complex Regional Pain Syndrom. Was hat er? Der hat Schmerzen, der hat eine Dystonie in dieser Hand, dieser Arm ist geschwollen, er ist heiß, er ist feucht, er kann ihn nicht bewegen, also ein richtig komplexes Krankheitsbild, auch mit einer autonomen Störung, Schwitzen, Schwellung, heiß. Und was das Spannende ist, diese Patienten sitzen nach einem Vierteljahr vor Ihnen und sagen, Herr Post, ich spüre meinen Arm nicht mehr, der gehört nicht mehr zu mir. Und wir können das heute tatsächlich in der Bildgebung darstellen. Sie sehen, die betroffene Hand, die rechte Hand wird natürlich über die Kreuzung in der Wirbel, also im Spinalkanal, im Rückenmark, in die linke Gehirnhälfte verschaltet. Und wir sehen tatsächlich, das ist eine funktionelle Bildgebung, weniger Aktivität tatsächlich in dieser Hand, im Gehirn. Also ein Beweis dafür, dass es neurobiologisch, was der Patient sagt, auch neurobiologisch nachweisbar ist. Und verrückterweise müssen Sie mich fragen, ja, dann spürt der Patient tatsächlich seine Hand nicht. Und das ist eben nicht so, weil wenn man die Nervengeschwindigkeiten dieser Hand misst, dann sind die im Vergleich zur unbetroffenen Extremität gleich. Also das heißt, die Nervenbahnen sind intakt, nur die Neuroplastizität wurde verändert durch den chronischen Schmerz. Und somit haben Sie auch den Beweis, Schmerz ist Gehirn. Auch ein spannendes Bild. Studenten, die müssen immer Geld verdienen, deswegen macht man mit denen Studien. Das ist ein Student, der liegt in so einem Scanner. Und was Sie hier unten sehen auf den unteren Sheets ist das Nervensystem, das im Gehirn Schmerz verarbeitet. Also dieser Patient, mit dem macht man einen Lasertest, dem brennt man mit dem Laser auf die Hand. Das tut natürlich irgendwann weh, ich will die Hand wegziehen. Und dann sind im Gehirn Zentren aktiv, die auch, also präfrontaler Kortex, Cingulum, Thalamus, Insula, Hippocampus, also dieser Schmerz wird ja auch bewertet. Das können wir heute sehen. Also wir können Schmerz tatsächlich heute noch nicht messen, aber wir können ihn im Gehirn sehen. Das ist der gleiche Student, der liegt auch wieder im Scanner, der bekommt den gleichen Schmerz, aber wir sehen keine Aktivität. Die Frage, was haben wir mit dem gemacht? Hier steht es natürlich, Distraction. Wir haben Ihnen eine Geschichte vorgelesen. Das heißt, ein Beweis dafür, dass nicht medikamentöse Verfahren wie Entspannung, wie Achtsamkeit tatsächlich sich positiv auf die Verarbeitung von Schmerzen auswirken. Ja, und dann müssen wir unterscheiden akuter von chronischem Schmerz. Das ist natürlich ein großer Unterschied. Akuter Schmerz ist ein sinnvoller Schmerz. Wenn Sie sitzen jetzt hier schon 3 Stunden und irgendwann wird es ungemütlich und Sie gehen nach links und nach rechts, weil es irgendwie drückt und zieht. Das ist ein Schwellensymptom sozusagen, weil diese Nozizeptoren, die Sie in Ihrem Körper haben, die arbeiten nach dem Schwellenprinzip. Das heißt, irgendwann halten Sie diesen Druck nicht mehr aus und dann verändern Sie Ihre Position. Akuter Schmerz, er schützt uns sozusagen. Ja. Und akuter Schmerz, der ist hoch anerkannt. Also würde jetzt noch jemand hier reinkommen mit dem Gipsfuß, würden alle auf ihn zugehen und kommen und sagen, setz dich, was können wir für dich tun, magst du was zu trinken? Das ist akuter Schmerz. Der ist in der Gesellschaft well established sozusagen. Der chronische Schmerz, der ist nicht mehr so well established, weil wir sehen Schmerzen nicht. Der Patient sitzt vor Ihnen, hat seit Jahren Schmerzen, aber ich sehe das ja nicht. Und ich lege nicht jeden Patienten in einen Scanner, um zu schauen, jawohl, der hat recht, er hat Schmerzen. Und die Definition, die Sie vielleicht mitnehmen, ist, alle Schmerzen, die länger als 6 Monate anhalten, sind chronische Schmerzen, nach der International Association of Study of Pain. Das heißt, auch die Migräne, mit der wir uns gleich beschäftigen werden, ein wiederkehrender Schmerz ist ein chronischer Schmerz. Ja, und wir müssen, wenn wir über chronischen Schmerz sprechen, und deswegen ist Yoga auch so spannend, chronischer Schmerz ist biopsychosozial. Was heißt das? Also chronischer Schmerz ist nie nur Knie, Kniegelenksarthrose, Hüftgelenksarthrose, Bandscheibe. Chronischer Schmerz hat immer Sorgen, Grübeln, Zweifeln. Wie geht es weiter? Ja, sozialer Rückzug. Also Sie sehen das hier sehr schön. Es fängt mal mit einem Schmerz an im Körper. Es kommt zu einer funktionellen Beeinträchtigung. Die Resilienz lässt nach. Es kommt zu einem mentalen Stress. Also Schmerz macht Stress, ist eine Stresserkrankung. Es kommt zur Erschöpfung und es kommt zum sozialen Rückzug. Ja, und diese Diagnose, wir haben diese International Classification of Diseases, F4541, Chronic Pain Disorder, das ist sozusagen die Schlüsseldiagnose, mit der man in Deutschland zum Beispiel überhaupt in einer Klinik behandelt wird, in einem Programm, wie wir das anbieten. Und was sind das für Menschen? Das sind Menschen, die haben Schmerzen länger als 6 Monate, die haben immer einen körperlichen Trigger. Sie müssen ja immer unterscheiden. Also es gibt auch Menschen, die eine schwere Depression haben, eine Traumafolgestörung. Und wir wissen allein schon, es gab früher mal so eine Boeing-Studie, die hat belegt, dass allein Unzufriedenheit am Arbeitsplatz zu Rückenschmerzen führt. Also das heißt, hinter Schmerz muss nicht immer ein körperliches Korrelat stehen, sondern hinter Schmerz, in dem Fall aber bei der F4541 ist es so, dass Sie immer einen initialen Auslöser haben. Einen Bandscheibenvorfall, eine Zosterneuralgie, eine Kniegelenksarthrose, Spinalkanalstenose. Das sind körperliche Ausgangspunkte. Und letztendlich ist es aber so, dass diese Ausgangssymptome immer mit psychischen Begleitphänomenen vergesellschaftet sind. Also Stress, Angstvermeidungsverhalten. Also das wissen wir, es ist eben spannend aus der Bildgebung, ein Mensch, der Schmerzen hat, der bewegt sich weniger, der hat Angst vor Bewegung. Und allein dies führt schon letztendlich zur neurobiologischen Veränderung im Gehirn. Also wir werden nachher noch sehen, dass man sagt, diese Immobilisation führt tatsächlich im Gehirn zu Veränderungen, die sich letztendlich negativ auswirken. Wir haben verschiedene Programme bei uns in der Tagesklinik. Was heißt Tagesklinik? Das werde ich Ihnen dann auch noch zeigen. Wir haben auch ein Programm für Kinder. Unser kleinster Patient ist 5 Jahre alt. Was hat er? Er hat Migräne. Migräne wird vererbt. Deswegen wollen wir uns mal mit diesem Krankheitsbild beschäftigen. Ja, wir können mal hier durchrechnen. Eine von 5 Frauen, also ich habe mal vorhin durchgerechnet, 6 Frauen hier im Raum müssten Migräne haben oder mal gehabt haben. Oder sie sind Träger sozusagen des Genoms, dass sie Migräne an ihren Kindern vererben. Ja? Wir schätzen, ungefähr 12% tatsächlich der Bevölkerung haben eine Migräne. Wenn sie ideal aufwachsen, müssen sie nicht unbedingt an ihrer Migräne erkranken. Sie können aber tatsächlich die Disposition dafür haben, an Migräne erkranken zu können. Also Migräne ist weit verbreitet. Und es gibt die sogenannte Global Burden of Disease, das ist 1992 unter anderem von der WHO gestartet und man schaut immer, wie kann man die Krankheitslast quantifizieren. Also wie schwer krank ist jemand und die schwerste Krankheitslast, die wird natürlich eine Krebserkrankung haben, die zum Tod führen kann. Das sind natürlich die Herz-Kreislauf-Erkrankungen, die Nierenerkrankungen. Und tatsächlich ist es so, bei der Migräne, neben der Angststörung, ist die Migräne mit einer hohen Krankheitslast behaftet. Warum? Wir haben eine sogenannte International Classification of Headache Disorders, das letzte Mal revidiert 2019. Gibt Ihnen genau vor, dass sie sagt, die Migräne ist ein attackenartiger Kopfschmerz, der meist einseitig ist, bei Kindern meist frontal, der einen pulsierenden Charakter hat, der eine starke Intensität hat. Wenn ich einen Migräneanfall habe, bin ich nicht alltagstauglich. Ich muss mich in der Regel hinlegen. Begleitphänomene sind, die Patienten haben Übelkeit, Erbrechen, sind lichtempfindlich, also die sind richtig krank. Deswegen auch ein hoher Krankheitslast auch. Obwohl man Gott sei Dank an der Migräne nicht stirbt, aber sie ist sehr beeinträchtigend. Was viele oder wenige wissen, neben Rückenschmerz ist die Migräne der häufigste Grund für Arbeitsunfähigkeit. Ja. Ja, was passiert eigentlich bei der Migräne? Und da sind wir im sogenannten trigeminalen System, also wir befinden uns irgendwie so im Hirnstammbereich. Und Menschen, die eine Veranlagung zur Migräne haben, die haben in ihrem Gehirn sozusagen in diesem Bereich dieser Kerne, die sind vulnerabel, die sind empfindlich für alles, was von außen kommt. Zu viel Licht, zu viel Geräusch, zu viel Geruch oder auch Stress. Und dann wird im Gehirn eine Substanz ausgeschüttet, CGRP. Die sehen Sie hier. Also diese Substanz wird hier ausgeschüttet und migriert an den Nerven ins Gesicht und an den Gehirnhäuten entlang. Sie haben hier die harte Meninkenhaut, also die Dura mater, hier die weiche Gehirnhaut. Und dort kommt es zu einer Entzündung. Also wir haben natürlich häufig bei Schmerz Entzündungsmechanismen, auch bei der Migräne. Und so ist es dann auch, dass dieser Patient sozusagen eine Beeinträchtigung erfährt, seiner Nerven, auch seine Hirnnerven. Sie haben vorhin etwas vom Nervus vagus gehört. dem 10. Hirnnerv, der sozusagen das parasympathische Nervensystem darstellt. Und wenn Sie einen Migräneanfall haben und dieser Nerv, der entspringt auch im Hirnstammbereich, dann wird er ausgeschaltet. Das heißt, in dem Moment wird Ihr Darm nicht mehr aktiviert, Ihnen wird schlecht und Sie erbrechen. Das ist der Mechanismus sozusagen der Übelkeit, des Erbrechens im Migränestatus. Ja, und jetzt sehen Sie natürlich, und jetzt kommen wir zusammen, wir sprechen viel über integrative therapeutische Ansätze. Hier sehen Sie jetzt den klassischen schulmedizinischen Ansatz, sozusagen diese Patienten, die können es ja im Migräneanfall nicht auf die Yogamatte stellen, ja? Sondern diese Patienten, die brauchen ja eine Akutbehandlung. Und natürlich können wir mit Yoga durchaus, durch die Yoga-Effekte, Positives erreichen. Wir müssten aber, wenn wir über Yoga sprechen, das unter den Prophylaktika einordnen. Wir haben Medikamente, die wir prophylaktisch in der Migräne einsetzen, im Spannungskopfschmerz. Und wir haben eine Vielzahl, unter anderem auch Antikörper heutzutage seit 5 Jahren zugelassen, die wir bei der Migräne einsetzen können. Also Sie sehen, der schulmedizinische Ansatz. Und ich habe Ihnen jetzt mal kurz, das müssen Sie nicht durchlesen, das war der Wunsch, auch mal die Patientin mitgebracht. Also die war bei uns in der Therapie, das ist eine Frau, die ist 40 Jahre alt, die hat seit der Jugend Migräneattacken, die Mutter war Migränepatientin, die war beim Neurologen, die hat Medikamente bekommen. Tatsächlich ist es so, dass wenn die Patienten Übelkeit haben und Erbrechen eine hohe Krankheitslast ist, die hat intravenöse Therapien bekommen, die musste in die Notaufnahme und die hat auch letztendlich einen Spannungskopfschmerz dazu. Die hat eine sogenannte kraniomandibuläre Dysfunktion, das heißt, die hat Probleme mit ihren Kiefergelenken, die knirscht, die hat eine Aufbissschiene und die hat einen hohen Chronifizierungsgrad. Die Patientin, wir haben die dokumentieren lassen, die hat im Schnitt 25 Kopfschmerztage im Monat und ungefähr 12 Migränetage. Also die Patientin, die war eigentlich nicht mehr arbeitsfähig, die hatte noch 3 Kinder zu Hause und da sehen Sie diese Krankheitslast, wie beeinträchtigend die auch ist. Das sind mal die Behandlungen, auch das muss man im Detail nicht durchgehen. Wir hatten die Patientin 2018 bei uns im Programm, das lernen Sie gleich kennen. Und wir haben damals eben vor 6, 7 Jahren mit dem Yoga angefangen, wie ich auch dankenswerterweise bei euch sein durfte. Und also die Patientin macht seit 7 Jahren Yoga tatsächlich. Die Patientin ist auf einen Antikörper eingestellt seit 4 Jahren. Und die Patientin arbeitet wieder Vollzeit, die versorgt ihre Kinder und hat im Schnitt noch einen Migräneanfall im Monat, der in der Regel durch Medikamente gut zu behandeln ist, macht 2-mal in der Woche ihr Yoga-Programm und ist ein ganz erfreulicher Verlauf. Also das ist wunderbar und ich sage auch, wir machen ja in der Medizin auch immer Auslassversuche. Wenn ich sie medikamentös einstelle, dann sagen sie, Herr Post, das will ich nicht immer nehmen. Also setzt man Medikamente auch nochmal ab, um zu schauen, ob die überhaupt noch nötig sind. Und das wird der nächste Schritt bei ihr sein, dass wir den Antikörper absetzen, um zu schauen, hat sich das auch insgesamt verbessert und kommt sie ohne Medikamente zurecht. So, und jetzt natürlich das, was Sie natürlich super brennend interessiert, wie funktioniert eigentlich die Transformation einer Anwendung, so nenne ich es mal, in den klinischen Alltag. Und wie funktioniert das überhaupt? Können Sie denn einfach, ich hatte Ihnen bewusst am Anfang ein bisschen Schulmedizin gezeigt, können Sie einfach sagen, ich mache jetzt mal Yoga in der Klinik? Und da muss man mal auf ein Thema kommen, dass man sagt, wir haben ja tatsächlich effektive, nicht medikamentöse, wir nennen das komplementäre, ergänzende Therapieverfahren. Das Wort alternativ will ich da gar nicht benutzen. Nehmen wir mal Akupunktur, das machen wir natürlich auch. Da gab es Studien dazu, die auch einen Wirkeffekt belegen. Ja? Wir haben bei uns im Programm eine Achtsamkeitslehrerin. Wir wissen, dass Mindfulness funktioniert, dass Mindfulness am Gehirn was macht. Und wir wissen seit heute, aber das wissen Sie schon noch länger, dass Yoga auch etwas macht. Und in der multimodalen Schmerztherapie, bei der Behandlung chronischer Schmerzpatienten ist es einfach so, Sie müssen tatsächlich verschiedene Verfahren kombinieren. Und das werden wir uns mal anschauen. Und wir haben uns natürlich auch Gedanken gemacht, ist denn Yoga auch effektiv? Also, und was sind denn die Ansätze, wie wirkt denn Yoga? Und da haben Sie heute schon viel Gutes gehört. Also Sie haben etwas von der Lena gehört über die autonome Regulation, die sich positiv auf den Körper auswirkt. Wir haben gerade etwas über Neuroplastizität gehört oder die neurochemische Modulation. Was ist das? Sie alle, wie Sie hier sitzen, haben Sie Neurotransmitter im Gehirn, Serotonin, GABA, Cannabinoides auch in Ihrem Gehirn zirkulieren. Und die werden halt, was die Studien im Moment auch zeigen, positiv belegt für Yoga-Effekte im medizinischen Bereich. Wir können das fortführen über antiinflammatorische Effekte, also zum Beispiel Tumornekrose, Faktor Interleukin ist so ein Effekt, den wir sehen durch Yoga. Interleukin, und wir sind hergegangen und messen tatsächlich bei unseren Patienten vor Therapiebeginn, wir machen 5-Wochen-Programm und nach Therapieprogramm die Cortisolspiegel und auch Interleukin. Wir sind da gerade im Auswerten. Ja, wir haben, wie schon gesagt, viel nachgedacht und gerade haben wir es eigentlich auch gehört. Ich möchte nochmal auf den Holger Kramer zu sprechen kommen, der jetzt seit einem Jahr in Tübingen einen Lehrstuhl für integrative Medizin am Robert-Bosch-Zentrum auch innehat. Und der zeigt auch nochmal, das sind Meta-Analysen, also eine Zusammenfassung von Studien, dass Yoga, also in der Zusammenfassung, gut funktioniert, also Remission, das heißt, wenn jemand geheilt ist, auch eine Nachhaltigkeit in der Behandlung, was ja ganz wesentlich ist. Also wir müssen uns ja immer fragen, reichen denn 6 Wochen Yoga aus? Natürlich nicht. Natürlich wird dieser Mensch, dieser Patient Yoga auch länger praktizieren müssen. Ja? Und warum zeige ich Ihnen die depressiven Disorder? Wir sehen ja insgesamt weltweit eine Zunahme der psychischen Erkrankungen. Die werden vielleicht natürlich auch mehr diagnostiziert, wir gehen offener damit um. Und dennoch ist es so, seit der Pandemie hat es nochmal deutlich zugenommen. Und wir haben in unserem Programm quasi keine Patienten mehr, die nicht eine Angststörung, eine Depression oder ein Erschöpfungssyndrom haben. Also ist es auch wesentlich, wenn wir Verfahren in der Klinik einsetzen, dass die natürlich auch einen Wirkeffekt haben. Das Gleiche kann man zum Stress sagen. Jeder Schmerzpatient, der chronischen Schmerz hat, hat Stress. Ja? Er ist nicht mehr alltagstauglich, er verliert seinen Job, er muss vielleicht in die Rente. Das sind alles Themen, was die Menschen belasten. Ja, wie schaut unser Programm aus? Wir haben uns Gedanken gemacht, da war ich noch künstlerisch aktiv. Ja, wir haben uns natürlich Gedanken gemacht, wir können nicht was nehmen für Asanas mit rein. Und wir haben damals in einem Austausch gewesen und haben uns dann verschiedene Asanas, letztendlich sind es 5, 6 Asanas, die den Patienten im Rahmen dieses Programms vermittelt werden. Und auch hier nochmal herzliche Grüße und vielen Dank für die Förderung von unserer Therapeutin, mit der ich auch immer wieder Supervision macht und die diese Kurse auch leitet. So sieht ein Programm aus, also Pain Management Programm, tagesstationär, Komplexbehandlung. Also wir schieben da vorne weg erstmal ein Assessment, also nicht jeder Patient kommt in so ein Programm. Und dann ist es sozusagen ein Mix, ein Therapiemix aus verschiedenen Ansätzen. Also bei vielen Patienten setzen wir die Medikamente tatsächlich ab. Wir machen viel Physiotherapie natürlich, wir haben ein Kinderprogramm und machen eben nicht medikamentöse Therapieverfahren. Wir haben Psychotherapeuten im Team, da geht es einmal um das Thema Stressbewältigung, Pausenmanagement, Pacing-Quoten, ganz spannendes Thema. Durch die Pandemie haben wir auch zunehmend Post-Covid-Patienten im Programm, die einen chronischen Schmerz immer noch von ihrer Erkrankung haben. Und Sie können diese Menschen nur mit sogenannten Belastungsquoten behandeln, dass Sie die nicht in die Belastungsintoleranz führen. Gut, Schlaf ist ein riesiges Thema im Schmerz Und so lernen diese Patienten das dann auch in den Alltag umzusetzen. Und ich habe Ihnen mal jetzt so eine Therapieübersicht mitgebracht. Wir nennen das Medical Yoga im integrativen Pain Management Programm. Das ist eine Woche. Die Patienten machen 5 Wochen. Und wie Sie sehen, machen wir mit den Patienten zweimal in der Woche eine Yoga-Stunde. Wir haben natürlich auch Achtsamkeit dazu kombiniert. Und weil natürlich die Evidenz gerade für die Ernährung und das Fasten auch relativ gut ist, fasten wir mit den Patienten 2 Tage im Monat. Also diese Intervallfastenregel 2, also 16, 8, 5, 2 wenden wir an. Ja, so sieht es aus. Also könnte auch ein ganz normaler Yogakurs sein. Ne? Das sind tatsächlich Schmerzpatienten, die das Lernen von unserer Therapeutin. Und man muss wirklich sagen, also es ist überraschend, so zusammenfassend, wie gut es von den Patienten angenommen wird. Das sind ja alles Menschen, die sich wegen ihrer Schmerzen nicht mehr bewegen. Und wenn die das erste Mal hören, ich soll jetzt hier Yoga machen, dann zucken die ja erstmal zusammen, weil die Angst haben, dass es schlimmer wird. Und das Schöne ist eben, in den 5 Wochen haben wir Zeit, die Patienten auch gut an diese Asanas heranzuführen. Und wir haben also durchweg, muss man sagen, positive Effekte. Und ich würde sagen, wir haben das mal nachgeschaut. Ich glaube, mindestens die Hälfte der Patienten setzt es dann später auch in Kursen fort. Ja, das ist so eine spannende Studie, die wollte ich Ihnen noch zeigen, ist natürlich auch eine bildgebende Studie. Da geht es ganz stark um die Insula und den Hippocampus. Das sind im Gehirn tief sitzende Strukturen, die für Emotionsregulation, die für Stress, für Schmerz, für Orientierung und Gedächtnis auch spannend sind. Und wir hatten vorhin gehört, die Neuroplastizität wird verändert positiv durch Yoga, dass sich quasi das Volumen in diesen, und das haben diese Studien, das ist eine Zusammenfassung von Studien, dass das Volumen in diesem Bereich wieder zugenommen hat. Es ist nämlich so, durch diese Minderbewegung führt es zum Volumenverlust im Gehirn, die tatsächlich, und das ist jetzt wirklich die schöne und gute Information, reversibel ist. Ja, vielen Dank für Ihre Aufmerksamkeit.
Vielen Dank für diesen tollen Vortrag über den Schmerz und was Yoga da bewirkt kann. So many thanks for this pain lecture, which we will give you later in English. Last and very interesting lecture will be from Lili Meyer. She is a historian and journalist, and she works in history a lot on which experience is important for people who are in very difficult situation, and how can they deal with it. And one of her books, which is Goodbye Children, is about one important person of education who worked with children who were brought outside of Germany in the time of the Nazi regime, when they were in France and without parents. And this man, he developed an education way, how to deal with these children in this difficult situation. Therefore, because we are in yoga very interested in difficult situations of life, we are interested in Marmas. She is the proper one to see also what is a qualitative research on what happens in yoga. So what Lena Förke was showing, you remember the Zika-like form of the points in the heart rate variability, and this very narrow when exercise was done with a lot of heavy muscle work. These people who did this experiment, we asked them afterwards what they experienced. And now Lili Meyer will give a idea what these people were telling. So thank you very much, and please you start.
Thank you. I come from a very different background, but I'm going to talk about yoga. So I will actually be presenting a study that we did at the Yoga Forum München, and it is a qualitative sociological study. And I'm going to talk about the study design of this subjective experience in yoga asana, and then I will show you some of the first findings. And so this was a mixed methods research project, meaning we looked at the same phenomena using different methods and theories. And so basically a multi-method analysis. On the one hand, a medical study, which was done by Lena Födke, which you heard about before with the qualitative heart rate, measuring how, or seeing how it can be used to measure the work of the autonomous nervous system. And Lena already talked a lot about this positive effect that yoga asanas have on the parasympathicus. We were interested if the people doing the asanas can notice. Do they realize that they're having this positive effect? So we did an accompanying sociological interview study, which I think some of you in this room were involved in. The study setup basically was two variants of Virabhata Asana 1. First time in what we call like a yogic relaxed way. So it's the same asana, but with a different mental task, different focus. In the first round, participants were told to do the asana in yogic manner based on the quality criteria of yoga. And this goes to what Lena before talked about, this proper voluntary action and regulation that you can take to influence the autonomous nervous system. And in the second variant, the task was to do it with significantly tense muscles. So participants were told to strain their muscles, and this is often done by people who are new to yoga. So when they do too much effort, the muscle way, and they do it very tense and not with the reduced effort that you want to have in yoga. And here you can see photo, 10 minutes apart, the yogic relaxed way and the muscular tense way, actually done here in Buchenried. The paper behind is to show that it's the same posture. And what you can see here is that you cannot see the difference. So from the outside, it looks completely the same. Also, like we saw in the photos that Dr. Post showed, it looks like a normal yoga session. We cannot see that the people are in pain. You cannot see that this is yogic and this is muscular. So you need other methods to find out what is happening. One is by measuring the heart rate variability. You can see the cables. She's wearing the monitor. And the other one is by talking to the people and finding out what they were experiencing. We did interviews right after the asanas, like 10 or 15 minutes after. Always the problem in such studies is that if you talk about it, it changes the focus. So if we had interviewed the people during the asana, it would have changed how they do the asana. It would have completely shifted the focus, but we did it 10 minutes afterwards. So very quickly afterwards, we had 8 study participants, all of them female, and all of them with many years of yoga experience based on a good yoga concept, which means they were able to do the asana without any outside explanation. Basically, the first requirement is that you have to be able to hold the asana for 5 minutes, because the heart rate variability needs 5 minutes to measure, and a lot of beginners would not be able to do that. What is important that at the time of the interviews, the participants did not know the results of their heart rate variability scan. Afterwards, we learned that all the measurements showed a significant positive effect. So for all participants, we could see the effect on the autonomous nervous system during the yoga asana, but they did not notice at the time when we interviewed them. So the question now is, did they realize that? So we have a lot of questions. How do experienced yoga practitioners perceive the experience in the asana? How do they describe it? What is the reality for them during the asana? Basically, do they realize the positive effect on the autonomous nervous system while it's happening? Can they describe it? Can they verbalize it? And did they actually regulate it? So did they have a plan to do this, or was it just happening to them? So do they notice an effect, and did they bring this effect into its process? An important concept here is embodied speaking. Are people actually able to verbalize their body experiences? Do they have the words to describe one's sensations and awareness? And I would say if you ever took like 3 weeks of yoga at the Volkshochschule, you don't yet have this concept ability. And this also goes to this yogic idea of pramana, to get an idea, an image, an impression, to be able to visualize the right concept for the proper regulation. So to show you some of the results, all the participants were able to practice this embodied speaking, so they were able to verbalize their non-verbal body processes. And most importantly, all participants were aware that there was a distinction between the yogic exercise and the muscle variant. And they all could describe it. 7 of the 8 people liked the yogic way better and said it was easier. Actually, 1 person preferred the muscle variant, but still could tell a clear difference between the two. And there were very many different observations. I'm going to give some examples. So it's not at all that all the participants had the same experience, but they all felt something and they were able to regulate whatever they were feeling. The majority of the observations we had were about body signals and a little less about mental descriptions. So this would both be introspection and then even less descriptions about the room temperature or the bird singing or the yogic mat, so the extrospection. And I'm going to give you some anonymized examples now. First for yogic relaxed version. So a person said, I experienced relaxation and stability and I felt so calm. And it spread down and throughout my whole body. Another person said, I managed to reach the bones relatively well. There was a feeling of lightness, of normal temperature, relaxed breathing, so it was a pleasant state. And it was not a time-critical situation, I could have stayed longer. Someone else said, when I was relaxing, so already calling it's relaxing, when I was relaxing because my breathing was going so well, I was particularly aware of the lateral extension, that is Kakshadhara and Parshvasandhi, then Sthana Mula, so the base of the rib cage, because my impression was that my breathing was flowing very smoothly and more effortlessly. So these are all examples for the yogic relaxed variant, and now you will see very different words used to describe the muscle tense variant. So someone said, my whole system has become a little out of balance. I just had the feeling that I was consuming so much energy that I was being drained. And someone else said that was pretty exhausting, a little more with violence. So very strong words like violence, it felt violent. Yet someone else said, I immediately noticed that I was breathing really heavily. I was breathing more deeply, almost as if I was doing a physical exercise. And my chest was really rising and falling, and I was busy watching my chest and my breath as it worked hard. The muscles were also working harder. Which also Lena talked a little bit about it. If you do too much muscle tension, it's more like exercise. It's not like yoga. So these are some of the main topics mentioned in the interviews. Like I said, the first observation was everyone felt a difference between the two, and then they talked about the same topics but different descriptions. So the yogic relaxed variant was described as easy, whereas the muscle one was strained or painful. A lot of talk was about the breath, about being able to breathe freely during the yogic variant, or the breathing being very strained or hard during the muscle tense version. Then we were interested in the focus of attention. So for yogic relaxed, people talked about being able to reach their bones, to reach their mamas. They focus on the relaxation. And now this important part of the regulation. What did people tell themselves how to do this asana? They guided themselves by focusing on yogic criteria, on focusing on the mamas, for example. In the muscle tense version, the focus was to keep the muscle tension and to survive. So a lot of people talked about just like trying to make it through the 5 minutes in this muscle tense version. And so the regulation, the inner regulation was very different. People really focused on the muscle tension, on keeping this kind of tension. And so for many, the people talked about a feeling of stability in the yogic version, and almost everyone described a feeling of trembling or shaking in the muscle variant, either the muscles shaking or the whole body trembling. A lot of people talked about the mamas in the yogic version, and almost none talked about the mamas describing the muscle version. In the yogic relaxed version, people described time going by very quickly, whereas in the muscle version, people said the 5 minutes felt very, very long. And then another regulation for the autonomous nervous system, always interesting, is the feeling of temperature. So in the yogic relaxed, people described a normal temperature. For the muscle tense, people said some people were cold, some people were hot, some people were sweating. So not at all the same temperature experience, but a lot of them experienced a different temperature compared to what they call the normal temperature. So usually in the muscle variant, people really felt it was more exhausting. They were more focused on their breathing, and they could not reach their mamas as well. Those are the main findings, I would say. Of course, we're hoping to publish them in 2026. And of course, it's much easier to explain this to an audience like you. So we will need to do a lot of explanation about the other parts. And also, which also Reinhard talks about a lot, so many yoga studies don't give a good explanation of what asana they did and in what way they did it. So this is very important that's why we have the beautiful pictures showing everything. And we do believe that there's a lot of potential for similar qualitative sociological interview-based studies, maybe by focusing on different asanas, by focusing on the asana practice in general, or by comparing someone with a 1-year yoga experience to a 10-year yoga experience. So if any of you have students who are looking for research projects, I'm always happy to get that started. Yes, thank you very much.
So now this is the best part of the things as we come to close. I joined the medical school in the year 1980, which is like now 45 years. Okay, 10 years I continued my studies. Medical education is a very long process, and thereafter 35 years as a part of a practitioner, researcher, whatever activities you may call it. So it is nearly now 45 years. You can say I am old, but not yet old enough, that I have lost my grey matter. I must confess that out of these 45 years, initial 40 years I saw people basically as molecules, and their problems, their so-called illnesses, had some chemical problems, molecular problems, which I could fix by giving some other chemicals or molecules. So then, as I said, that till that time, all those 40 years, I was a bit younger, I wasn't really bothered about my own health. I think you start thinking, about health health and well-being, as you slowly start getting older, as you start seeing a need for it. So now was you can say the real big dilemma for me, that all these 40 years I have seen people as molecules and chemicals, and which I could really fix with some other chemicals or molecules. So now about 4-5 years ago, I had this question to myself, that can I see myself really as a molecules, made up of some molecules, or do I need some other way to think myself as a person. So I thought that all that molecular approach which I had used for all these 40 years doesn't help me to see myself as being made up of so many of these molecules which we love to show you. I can't really visualize myself of being made of BDNF, cortisol, GABA, nice things, of course, nice things to research. So then I thought that, yes, all these years we looked at the molecular and the biochemical paradigm in modern medicine. Should we give ourselves, and modern medicine, in a whole century has given itself, you can say, a chance to itself to work more with the biochemical and the molecular paradigm. That is it time that we give ourselves chance to work more on the biophysical paradigm and see ourselves as a whole system, not just consisting of molecules, but as a whole system. And it is in continuation with what Lily presented to us, our own personal experience. Of course, as all the learned people I showed you in my presentation, they said that we should also have the ability to feel our own health, and more importantly contribute towards the health and well-being and the maintenance of that. That is when this whole endeavor started, this whole systemic thinking, and then this whole thinking about actually the nice rhythms, and then comes the role of yoga in this whole thing, that in this system of ours, how these rhythms, which as everyone expressed, is a very ancient idea, that we are a system, we have these nice rhythms. Sometimes these nice rhythms, they need a little bit of being on the track, and the role of yoga into that context. That is how this whole journey began, and therefore now as you see, many colleagues together, we all try to sort of shake hands with the yoga people in this endeavor, wherein we see as ourselves as whole system, whole human beings composed of these nice rhythms, and the role of yoga to maintain this nice music of life to the extent that we go on, we depart as healthy and well-being individuals. Thank you so much. It was a real great pleasure, this particular event. Thank you to you, Reinhard. Thank you to all of them, very important. And it's a great pleasure to have this second edition. So we started this with the first edition, thinking about public health, and I think we go to a more basic science now. So thank you so much. Your time.
Thank you to everybody at home for your interest. Thank you here. This is thank you for the wonderful lectures everybody gave us. A bunch of flowers, I would say, a different.
Yes.
You gave nice from music, and so we close here, and goodbye.